2027.
The answer from European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
On Saturday, we also agreed a new £2.2 billion loan for Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sends his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to you?
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
I will do.
I've got to tell him what your reaction is, so I need to know. I need to know.
He is a great gentleman. A great, great gentleman. He said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time, and he better not be right. Well, I just think he should be more appreciative, because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us, because as you know, that's right there, that's the border.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning. Happy Sunday to you. Welcome to the show. This is Alex Phillips with you until 10 a.m. this morning for blockbuster hours of news and views. And hopefully we'll do our best to try and sweep away some of your blues, because there's a lot to talk about. Yes, there is. If you've woken up this morning and, like me, the first thing you do is glance at the news headlines, you will have noticed that there's been a little bit of kinetic energy, let's say, over in Iran. Donald Trump saying, well, give it 2 weeks. I'll contemplate what I'm going to do. Let's see if Iran wants to negotiate. Well, those 2 weeks more like 2 New York minutes, because he's gone and done it. 6 B-1 bombers were sent over to Iran during the early hours of the morning and dropped kinetic payloads, 12 of those bunker buster bombs, 30,000 pounds each, able to burrow 200 feet underground, taking out Iran's nuclear program bases. Donald Trump saying it is a spectacular success. But as America cautiously celebrates what it thinks has been its overnight operation alongside Israel in Operation Rising Lion to take out Iran's uranium enriching facilities, air raid sirens have been going off all over Israel as Iran retaliates. So there is much to speak about today in the world of global politics. Here to guide me through it is going to be Will Kingston, political commentator and host of Fire at Will podcast. Well, Fire at Will, Donald Trump has done.
Yeah, I love the smell of napalm in the morning, Alex. What a morning to be on air.
What a morning.
What a historic morning. And I think an act of both moral clarity and political courage from Donald Trump. A lot to get into.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Well, do you know, let's go straight over to Israel, to Tel Aviv right now, where the journalist and broadcaster Jonathan Sakadotti is going to join us to tell what the situation is like on the ground there. Good morning to you, Jonathan.
Good morning, Alex. From the bomb shelter here in Tel Aviv.
Wow, so you're actually in a bomb shelter at present. What time did the sirens start going off? How long have you been in there?
So we've been in here probably about 10, 15 minutes, which is a bit longer than the usual. And when I say the usual, that should give you an idea of what life is like here for many in Israel. The sirens do go off, but the Home Front Command here is so used now to this that people tend to be near shelters they can get to, whether it's in their own homes, buildings, or public ones. And there is indeed now quite a civilized pre-warning warning. So you get a good 10 minutes or so where I am to prepare. and then in the last minute you get an alert telling you to get inside the bunker. What we know now, though, as people have been waking up, is that these sirens didn't go off during the night when America was carrying out the strikes in Iran. They've only gone off really this morning. And so people slept through the night quite unusually here. Normally, they tend to attack during the small hours of the morning, waking up many parts of the nation. And I would say that this is in stark contrast to when Israel carried out its first strikes just 9 days ago in Iran. The Home Front Command decided to wake everybody up, get them in the shelters as a preventative. That didn't happen this time, and that just shows you in those 9 days the shift from the fear of retaliation from Iran to the position of confidence, I would say, that really characterizes what happened last night. People have been questioning Donald Trump's motivation. They've been questioning his 2 weeks. They've been questioning what they saw as vagueness, as indecision. But I would say that the entire world, the West, owes an enormous vote of thanks, both to Donald Trump and the United States, and also to Benjamin Netanyahu and the state of Israel for what it's doing at the moment. This is carefully coordinated, carefully planned, and this is keeping the rest of the world safer. What happened last night is a historic and momentous moment and event, and it's something that the rest of the world needs to get behind. So now we see the UN, true to form, criticizing what happened. We see Guterres saying that this is the beginning of some form of chaos. This is totally the wrong response from the UN, in my opinion, and I think that will be a widely held opinion here in Israel and over in the US. I think it's time now. The chips are down. The world needs to decide which side it's on, and there's only one right side in this war.
I couldn't agree more. I woke up this morning and did a little air pump, if I'm honest with you. I mean, I get the impression, like you're saying, that this has been really discriminately planned over a number of months, if not years. The idea that Operation Rising Lion was cooked up in the Situation Room in the last 24 hours, I think is, unfathomable. Without a doubt, Israel have been laying the groundwork, taking out military commanders, paving the way to get the intelligence on where those targets are, make sure nuclear scientists have been taken out, again, with incredible military precision, making sure there's minimum civilian casualties. And one imagines that America's been embraced to conduct this exercise. Indeed, perhaps the creation of the 30,000-pound bunker buster bombs was entirely for this purpose.
Yes, listen, this was the logical and necessary conclusion of the path that the Islamic Republic of Iran refused to abandon. America and Israel have been trying for years to take different paths. You know, people have mocked Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, for constantly saying that Israel would have to strike in Iran for so many years. But really what that means is that he didn't do it for all those years. This has been really the case because it was the last resort at this stage. The US, Israel, they offered negotiations, they've extended time, they've warned, they've given the regime in Tehran every opportunity to reverse course, to step back from its genocidal ambitions, to drop its nuclear aggression and its campaign of regional subversion. And in the end, this is a choice that the Islamic Republic of Iran, the regime that holds that country hostage, it holds the Iranian people hostage, this is a decision that they have made. And if peace is to ensue now, as Donald Trump has called for, it will be from a position of enormous strength. And that, I think, is the key thing that many people are forgetting in today's world, that peace is made by the victors. Peace is made by people who have defeated the enemies. Peace is made by those who dictate the terms of that peace. So Iran does now have a choice, but it's worth saying that the regime in Iran is not one that is likely to back down, to climb down the ladder. It wants to save face, and more than that, other than their honor, they have this genocidal, apocalyptic vision of what will happen in the world. They have a countdown clock in Tehran, counting down to the end of the state of Israel in a number of years. This is not a rational actor in the way that many in the West might imagine. And that's why this action has taken place now. So we will see what happens. And I'm talking to you now from a bomb shelter, because that regime is still trying to attack people here in Israel. That regime is still launching ballistic missiles and drones towards an innocent civilian population. It has made no pretense to be aiming towards military facilities. It is launching missiles and rockets of enormous capacity towards civilians. It has hit a mosque, it has hit a hospital, it has hit a kindergarten inside a building, it has made people homeless, it has killed 24, it has injured hundreds. This is really a very clear-cut case, if you ask me, of a situation in which the world needs to fight against a tyrannical, theocratic, apocalyptic regime. And countries like Great Britain have equivocated. Prime Minister Keir Starmer and David Lammy have not been leading on this, but thankfully they appear to be falling in line with what the US and Israel is doing. And I repeat again, the world, Great Britain, the West, owes an enormous vote of thanks, an enormous debt of thanks to Donald Trump and the United States for what's happening now. It may not be easy going forwards for all of us, and I, again, repeat that I'm saying that from somewhere firing line, but this is the unfortunate and necessary requirement in the face of that refusal by that evil regime and its axis of proxies, which Israel has spent the last year and 8 months dismantling, while the world, many in the world, in the UK in particular, and Europe have looked on and criticized at every step, saying Israel should not be taking the actions it has. But thanks to those actions that Israel has been taking, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Syria has fallen. The Houthis are weaker than they were. Hamas in the Gaza Strip. All of these are linked and directly related to the Iranian axis of evil that threatens all of us. So the actions that Israel has been taking paved the way to the actions that the US took last night. And the actions that the US took last night have made the world a much safer place, because the prospect of a nuclear-armed Iran, of a nuclear-armed Islamic Republic, Iran, I should say, is now much, much smaller, if not completely removed. And for that, we owe the United States and the State of Israel our thanks.
Jonathan, I couldn't have put it better myself. Look, can you hear anything outside? How long do you think you're going to be in the bomb shelter for?
Well, we have heard the booms. There have been a couple of waves of alerts while we've been in here. The booms are usually interceptions. There are reports that there were some direct hits not far from where I am in the latest wave. So we are waiting in here till we get the all clear from the Home Front Command. But as I said, that's something that we've got increasingly used to over time. Sometimes it's because there could be shrapnel still falling from interceptions. Israel has managed to actually intercept to stop many of those ballistic missiles and other threats coming in the air. So we wait here until we're told that we have the all clear and things are safe.
Jonathan, do stay safe, and incredible interview there. I've never spoken to somebody in a bomb shelter before. But very many things I've want to pick up on there. I mean, look, I get the impression that this has been strategically choreographed for a long time now, because had Israel not taken out Hezbollah, which of course was in terms of number alone, possibly in terms of kinetic ability as well, the most powerful of Iran's proxies, were Hamas equally not thoroughly engaged, for want of a better phrase, over in Gaza. And not just that, but most of the region, most of the Arab states surrounding Israel are actually minded to intervene, intercept. They're probably very thankful, frankly, that that Iran has been, in terms of its nuclear capability, hopefully rendered completely incapable. It does seem to me that this has been very perfectly precision conducted to make sure that Iran has been destabilised, that Iran cannot get access to a nuclear weapon with minimum civilian casualties and minimum chance of a dangerous response.
Well, I think this is the key point, Alex, in that the Iranian regime brought this upon themselves when they set off a chain of events via their proxy Hamas on October 7th. This would have been a far more difficult operation if their various proxies in the region, the Houthis, Hamas, Syrian rebels, the Iraqi rebels, you know, these 7 different proxy regime or proxy groups that have been doing Iran's bidding for years now. If they were stronger, this would have been a much harder operation to carry out. Israel have recognised that the timing for this moment is correct, and as such, they are now in a position where for the first time in a long time, this Iranian regime looks to be, knock on wood, on its knees.
Yeah, we've got the Ayatollah hiding in a bunker, still able, it seems, to command ballistic attacks. But you wonder how much kinetic ability Iran now has. There seems to have been, at least, albeit on surface level, a slight divide now between Russia and Iran, who for a long time have aided and abetted one another. China finds himself in a difficult position as part of that anti-Western axis of which way do they turn. Are they able to visibly support Iran? We know that they provide at least dual-use parts, if not more refined armaments, to the Iranian regime. But it does seem to me that you have to question what Iran can now do. One assumes very little. There will be, I'm sure, US air bases on high alert. I'm sure as well that cargo shipping going through the Strait of Hormuz will be incredibly worried about the response from the Houthi rebels. But I'd imagine those American warplanes are still there, still in the Middle East or the surrounding areas, ready to strike. Indeed, actually, the last time we saw a B-1 bomber so decisively deployed in that region was to target particular sites over in Yemen belonging to the Houthi rebels. So I'd imagine that Israel and America have stitched up a sort of reinforcement program now to mitigate the worst of the fallout from this.
Yeah, all of that stuff would have been planned, and I think regime change is at the back of everyone's mind, quickly moving to the front of everyone's mind. The one thing we all know about the Middle East, though, Alex, is that so often when you have evil, awful regimes that fall, even more evil, even more awful regimes take their place in many instances. So much of the thinking now doesn't have to just be about how do you take on this awful dictatorial regime, but what comes after it. And I imagine that is also very much in the forefront of Israel's thinking as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, let's have a listen to a clip of Donald Trump this morning and pick up on what he said.
There will be either peace or there will be tragedy for Iran far greater than we have witnessed over the last 8 days. Remember, there are many targets left. Tonight's was the most difficult of them all, by far, and perhaps the most lethal. But if peace does not come quickly, we will go after those other targets with precision, speed, and skill. Most of them can be taken out in a matter of minutes. There's no military in the world that could have done what we did tonight, not even close. There has never been a military that could do what took place just a little while ago.
Well, that statement coming from the President of the United States of America last night after it became apparent that America had joined Israel in bombing Iran. He talks about many targets left. Now, talking about regime change, it seems to me that at least militarily, those allies of the Ayatollah, many of those have been taken out. The heads of the Quds Force, the heads of the IRGC, deputy commander of the Iranian military. What targets are we potentially talking about here? Because there has been a discussion in order to facilitate a neat and complete regime change of targeting some of the more radical clerics around the Ayatollah, or even, and Donald Trump has said this himself on Truth Social, the Ayatollah himself.
Yeah, I do wonder whether that would be at the moment an unnecessary step too far. But let's pause on Trump here, because he didn't have to do this. In fact, it would have been easier for him not to do this, to go full-on isolationist, which much of his base would have liked, and said this is a Middle East problem, not an American problem. The guiding principle for a great leader is to do the right thing as opposed to just doing the popular thing. Trump has done that today when he didn't have to do it. I think this will go down as one of the singular achievements of his presidency, and I think an act of great political courage.
Let's have a listen to the response to America's intervention from the Israeli President, Benjamin Netanyahu.
Congratulations, President Trump. Your bold decision to target Iran's nuclear facilities with the awesome and righteous might of the United States will change history. In Operation Rising Lion, Israel has done truly amazing things. But in tonight's action against Iran's nuclear facilities, America has been truly unsurpassed. It has done what no other country on earth could do. History will record that President Trump acted to deny the world's most dangerous regime the world's most dangerous weapons. His leadership today has created a pivot of history that can help lead the Middle East and beyond to a future of prosperity and peace.
Well, people would imagine that bottles of fizzy rose water would have been popped in Saudi Arabia as well this morning. I mean, what's interesting about all of this to me is that I think there'll be some lone voices in America, and certainly we've already heard Congress complain that they didn't get a vote on this. Well, that's going to take away the element of surprise, you know, if you're going to launch a shock attack on your enemy to stop them from being able to move their capabilities around, hide the nuclear warheads that were in the process of development, etc. You don't go and sit there and have a good long-winded debate about it.
Well, Biden and Obama certainly didn't on countless occasions in Somalia, in Yemen, in other places where they didn't go to Congress. So there is a double standard here on the left.
There will be people after, of course, the sort of Bush-Blair weapons of mass destruction and Iraq furore, let's call it. People who will say, but did Israel and did the US really have intelligence that Iran were moments away from making nuclear warheads? I mean, no one needs to go above 60% uranium enrichment unless you're planning to do that. Certainly, the nuclear inspectorate had said that Iran were no longer complying. But at one point, you had Tulsi Gabbard in America sounding, she says she was misquoted, no words were distorted, but sounding as though she was sceptical about whether or not Iran was close to developing nuclear warheads.
Yeah, and Trump has chided her subsequent to that. I think a couple of points need to be made here on those lone voices that you mentioned, Alex. Number one, this continues this weird, awful trend of the relationship between leftist liberals and fundamentalist Muslims that we have seen every single day since October 7. It's not good company to keep. But the second thing, I think, which is really important here, is that this is different to Iraq and it is different to Afghanistan. This is not going to be a 20-year boots-on-the-ground conflict without any real clear objective. There were very clear military objectives here. They have seemingly been largely achieved, although I'm sure that this is still going to continue for a period. But there is a very big difference here between the endless wars of the early 2000s and stopping a rogue theocratic state, which is explicitly called for the death of the Israeli people and putting them back where they belong, which is firmly into the shadows.
Before we go to break, let's have a quick listen to a voice note. This is Martin.
Morning, Alex. This bunker buster should have been done over a year ago.
Too right.
When this first started with Palestine. If it had been done then, maybe things might be a bit different now.
Well, interesting thoughts indeed, and I'm glad it's been done is all I can say.
Yeah.
I've been following those bunker busters and their movements for quite a while. And I'm pleased to announce, actually, breaking news, as we've learned that America has used 6 bunker busters, but we also know that there were 6 bombers that went over, each carrying a payload of 2 bombs each. There's 6 more in the arsenal, in the region. Just saying. Right, we're going to go to break now. If you want to be like Martin, and let me know your thoughts on whether this morning you were putting a shot of gin in your tea in celebration. I don't know, going out and buying some, a joyous bar. Let me know. 0344 499 1000 is the number to dial. Perhaps you think that this is terrible and there's been too much West intervention in the Middle East and it's always ended in disaster. Are you about to build yourself an Anderson shelter, concerned that this is the beginning of World War III? You can also WhatsApp me on that number, 0344 499 1000, and leave me a voice note, just like the lovely Martin did. 87222 is the number if you'd like to send me a text message. If you do that, you've got to write the word text before you write the content of your message. That way, it doesn't scramble the tracking systems, the GPS. Sorry, Phil Dave says I said don't write the word text before you text, write the word talk before you text. Anyway, you've got to write the word talk before you text. That way, it doesn't scramble the intercontinental ballistic tracking devices of anything America might be lobbing in the direction of Tehran at the moment, and instead it wends its way through all of those missile space junk and radars past the B-1s and the F-22s and straight to the mast on top of Talk Towers, where it wends its way down into this little command centre in our very own situation room here. Right, we're going to have a few advertisements now, but don't go anywhere because Will and I are back after this.
It's the most distressing horrible thing you can never go to. My wife was begging to die at one point. There has to be some kind of law that allows it. I don't know whether I could have allowed it or gone ahead with letting my wife go through this. But I wish people on both sides would take a little care. And I know it's a passionate thing. And if you went through this, what you suffered and what my wife suffered, perhaps you'd understand why the assisting dying bill might be a good thing.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back. Now, I believe history today has been made as we wake up to find that America has deployed 6 of its B-1 bombers. I keep calling them B-1 bombers, B-2 bombers.
I don't know the difference.
There are differences, and I should know because I go to Fairfield Airshore, and I'm going to find that I've got it wrong again.
Yeah. Very big planes.
Stealths. The beautiful, the flying wing. I love those planes. They're absolute sexy pieces of machinery. Anyway,
this is the type of top-class military technology analysis that you can only get on talkTV.
Well, do you know what? I do fancy myself as a military jet enthusiast. I'm just not very good with numbers. I think I'm dyspraxic. So I'll recognise its silhouette in Jane's defence, but then when someone asks me to give a combination of numbers, I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah. I have seen a little glint in your eye whenever the words bunker buster bombs pop up.
I love those bunker buster bombs. I've been obsessed with those for a few days now. I've been like, come on. I was driving over to Wiltshire with my other half the other day, and I was sitting there, he was in the passenger seat, and I was like, can you give me all the statistics on the bunker buster bomb? I want to know how fast they go. I want to know how they get through the rock. I want to know like the payload they're carrying. I want to know the speed in which they, blah, blah, blah. It's like Top Trump, so I was making him give me all the statistics like the weird nerd that I am.
Well, I thought they were just really big bombs that actually then just blew up everything on the top and then down the bottom. But they're drills. They're combination
and they I think things whirl off and like blow things up as it goes. I don't know.
It really is like something out of an action movie. It's unbelievable.
It's basically, I feel like we've woken up in the aftermath of Top Gun 2.
Yeah, it is exactly like Top Gun Maverick.
This is how predictable. It was predictable, wasn't it, that this was going to happen, because Top Gun 2 preeminently was based on it. This idea that somewhere in some sort of strange mountainous region in the desert, F-22s must be deployed to go down some sort of gorge to bomb an underground nuclear weapon facility. I'm like, well, it might not be the F-22s, it was those bunker buster bombs, but still. We have woken up this morning to find that Trump, after saying he would wait 2 weeks, I knew that was the sort of palm off. I think he just wanted to see what Tehran would do. And when they weren't going to do anything, he's like, right, let's get in there. Yep. We've woken up this morning to find that apparently Iran's nuclear weapons capability has all but been obliterated following targeting of Fordow, which was the main subterranean weapons facility there, Natanz, and other such sites, missile bases, nuclear facilities, oil refineries, military bases, all have been targeted to bring Iran to its knees. Let's read some of your messages now. Mixed feelings about this. The anti-Trump brigade will now come out in droves. The do-gooders need to get real and wake up to life, says Alan in Merseyside. We are going to be talking about some of the so-called do-gooders carrying their placards saying, be on the right side of history. What history? Nuclear apocalypse? Jeez. Hi, Alex. This may sound controversial, but what Trump did last night was absolutely brilliant strategic thinking. He has, in one move, crushed the Rhino and Warhawks in the US Senate and Congress, who were looking forward to earning billions on a ground war, and eased pressure on Israel, kept the hands clean of his cabinet members like Hegseth and Tulsi, scared Russia and China by being unpredictable, shut the CIA up, and taken the ground war totally off the table. I think it also will show Trump, who is generally loyal to the cause. Maybe now people will be horrified by the actions, but in 6 months to a year's time, last night's actions will be the difference to the start of a World War III scenario and peace. I totally agree. Steve the Cornish pirate, now a Trump convert. Maybe it will inspire all politicians in the saying actions speak louder than words. Dan from Kent, however, says, morning, Alex. Welcome to World War III. I'm not sure I agree with that, Dan. I more agree with Ellie, who says, wow, just woken up to the news. Peace through strength. What a great interview with Jonathan. Thank the Lord for Israel and America. Thank the Lord for Trump. I feel quite emotional. So do I. And Sean from God's own city of Gloucester says there's no greater contrast than between the strong, decisive leadership of Trump and the weak, U-turning ideology of the pathetic Keith Stalin. I'm patriotic but currently embarrassed to be English, while these cretins that have to be told what a woman is are in power. I mean, very quickly, let's pick up on that, because I get the impression that Europe would deliberately sidelined from all of this. Trump went, go on, you go and have your chat in Geneva with Iran's foreign minister. You want to bring back the JCPOA so you can sell. When you look at the trading statistics, by the way, of what EU countries have been selling to Iran, including the UK, can I just say, but mainly France, it's always been optical goods. Yeah. Optical goods. What? So everyone in Iran suddenly got myopia, or might those optical goods being used in creating drones, which Iran is one of the world leaders in? I mean, we have been ridiculously weak towards Iran for over a decade now.
What we've seen overnight has demonstrated how irrelevant the UK and Europe are on the world stage now under mealy-mouthed pacifists like Macron and Starmer. And it goes to show again the difference between having a leader that has a conviction. Like, make no mistake, Trump has been saying that Iran cannot get the bomb for decades now, compared to someone like Keir Starmer, who just reflexively says, well, we need to de-escalate the situation.
Gosh, idiot.
Without any sort of conviction. And look, I think even if you disagree with this action taken by Trump, you can understand the strength and the courage that went into making that decision. And I think
how can anyone disagree with preventing some psychos in a theocratic, mad, ideologically driven death cult regime from having a nuclear weapon? Well, I just can't see any world in which preventing that is a bad thing.
Well, I'll tell you how they would think that way. They would think, well, we need to continue with diplomacy. We will need to continue with talking with them and working it out through those sorts of means. And here's the problems with that, Alex. Number one, we've been trying that for years and years and it hasn't worked. But number two, diplomacy doesn't work with a theocratic rogue state.
You can't sing Kumbaya with terrorists.
You can't sing Kumbaya with terrorists. That's exactly right.
It's that simple.
These people do not act in a rational way when they are religiously motivated to destroy the state of Israel.
Well, they want the end times. That's the thing with these nutters.
But I think a lot of people assume that this is just somehow rhetoric, that, you know, the Ayatollah Khomeini, when he says we want to wipe Israel off the face of the map, it's almost this rhetorical device. No, when they say it, they believe them.
Yeah. No, they all want their 72 virgins. Even that beardy weirdy who's almost a noctogenarian or something at this point.
Yeah,
a nonogenarian. I've invented a word.
I'm always reminded of a Billy Connolly skit at this point when he talks about the Islam 72 virgins thing. He goes, 72 virgins sounds like a nightmare. Give me 2 fire-breathing XXXXX.
Yeah, I like to see how that old Ayatollah does. Probably got dicky heart. He won't survive the 72 virgins for long.
No.
Oh, anyway, blimey, that's been going down some strange routes. We're going to be talking about domestic news as well, don't worry. But the big news, of course, this morning is America has intervened in Israel's Operation Rising Lion and has targeted Iranian military sites overnight, including Fordo, the big nuclear or uranium enrichment plant hidden in subterranean land in a mountainous region using their bunker buster bombs. Boom! Love it. Right, now in other explosive news, it is also competition time. Here at Talk, we're giving you a chance to win a pair of Oasis tickets, and not just any old Oasis tickets, not the ones in, you know, posh parts of London where all the people who are now, you know, the hipsters in Shoreditch who thought they were brought up in the 90s but weren't, are going to turn up and ruin it all by being too straight-laced. No, we're going to send you right to the heart of the madness, to Manchester itself on July the 19th. We'll also put you up in a hotel, that's right, and give you $5 grand to spend. Here's everything you need to know and how to enter.
Alright, kid, you have to be over 18 to enter in the UK, excluding Northern Ireland, for a chance to win a pair of tickets to the most electrifying rock and roll reunion of the century, a hotel stay and $5 grand spending money. All you gotta do is text the word Oasis to 83338 by Monday the 7th of July at 11 p.m. and you'll be entered into the draw to go supersonic this summer. Sorted. Right, here's all the legal stuff. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You've got to have the bill payer's permission or post your name and number to Oasis Prize Draw, PO Box 3190, Colchester, CO2 8GP, to arrive by 5 p.m. on the 10th of July. This is a TalkSport limited promotion run on TalkSport, Talk and Virgin Radio UK stations. Full T's and C's at talksport.com.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
I have got giddy, childish excitement at the moment in the aftermath of this bombing because it means I get to read out some sort of weird military stats. Do you want them, Will?
Yes, please.
You want them, don't you?
Huzzah!
The B-2, that flying wing, the stealth, it looks like something out of Batman. That thing is gorge. I love that plane. Anyway, it can fly at an altitude of 50,000 feet. It's equipped with stealth technology, making it difficult for enemies to detect. It was first used, the B-2 Spirit, in combat during the 1999 Kosovan War.
Right.
It's always amazing, actually, when you look into these military jets. Like, my favourite is the SR-71, the Blackbird. That's a cool... You're looking at me like, what is that?
No, I've just never equated military technology with an almost sexual energy, but I'm now kind of starting to get it. It's incredibly exciting.
There's a reason why those missiles look phallic. But anyway, this is a weird conversation for 6:30 in the morning.
Oh, why not?
And if Phil Dave could lose any more hair, then he probably just did. But no, I mean, I love it. When you sort of look back at some of these incredible aeroplanes, like the SR-71, the Blackbird, which is the greatest military jet of all time. That's the one that goes into the stratosphere and has like actual like astronauts in it, and it bleeds because its hydraulics have to be so adaptable because it flies at such a altitude at such a high speed that when it's on the ground, all the sort of pipes bend and all the juices come out, and you have to have big trays under. Oh my god, I love it. Anyway, that thing
I'll let
was like
the juices come in, go through to the keeper. But the point which is interesting when you watch all this stuff up close in the last couple of years, you go, you know, James Bond stuff actually does happen. You know, you look at the military beeper thing, and, you know, someone said the other day...
That was so cool, the heads, but that was the last time I was this excited. Heads full of walkie-talkies. First of all, it's the cell phones that went bam, 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 bam. And they're like, oh, dear Lord, Israel's gotten into our supply chain. We better switch to the walkie-talkies. Bam, 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 bam. Sorry,
someone
so
said
exciting.
the other day, the issue with James Bond isn't that it's not realistic, it's that James Bond isn't Israeli. And I went, yeah.
Yeah, I know. Now, let's talk about the UK now. We are going to, of course, keep dipping back into the international news. But let's segue to the UK via all of those absolute lunatics who are now marching in support of the psychopathic theocrat, the Ayatollah, Ali Khamenei, who is carrying placards saying, choose the right side of history. Don't bomb Iran. Don't bomb Iran. Well, guess what? The Iranian people, 80% of them hate that regime. Women are being tortured, abused, beaten up by the police for not covering their heads. It's a mad, theocratic, autocratic, evil, ideological, psychopathic, sociopathic, genocidal regime, which frankly needs to be destabilised. Civilians have not been targeted. What is wrong with these people? To me, there's only one explanation. You've either got a load of numbskull lefties who don't know their backside from their elbow, or these people are sympathisers with terrorists.
Yeah, a bit of column A, a bit of column B. Alex, the strange contradictions in identity politics will never cease to amaze me, because if you look at the theocratic Iranian regime, so many of the things that they believe in would be considered morally abhorrent by these people marching through the streets if it was a white person in the United Kingdom or the US who was doing it. This is a regime that despises women. This is a regime that despises gay people. This is a regime that has no appreciation for the separation between church or mosque and state. These are all things that in a Western liberal democracy we should cherish. These are things which you get lectured on about university campuses. At the same time, because the Islamic people are now an oppressed minority group, they therefore are somewhere on the hierarchy, which means that
I love
we need
this
to
idea
support them.
that Islamic people are an oppressed minority group, and in most countries in the world, they kind of don't look like that.
No, that's exactly right. But that is the way that these people think. It is such a crude worldview, and yet we have to live with it, unfortunately.
Thank goodness, actually, the Home Secretary has taken a solid decision in prescribing Palestine action, making them illegal. Membership, therefore, or support of that organisation could result in 14 years imprisonment. I mean, look, I don't think this has just been an overnight decision because of what happened at RAF Bryce Norton, although they did drag their heels after the previous attacks on private companies, arms manufacturers and the like, even at one point involving sledgehammer attacks on the police.
Yeah.
But one assumes that this organisation has been under watch for quite some time. They probably, I would assume, although I don't know, and I don't want to libel, albeit a soon-to-be prescribed organisation, one assumes that they probably have some pretty questionable funding trails as well.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. But also the great irony of these lefties suddenly trying to make this a free speech issue, as if, you know, we need to support the free speech of these people, when A, free speech doesn't include the right to go to a military base and start destroying military hardware, but B, these are the people that despise free speech in almost every other context and are very happy to shut down speech when it is speech that doesn't support their warped worldview. So spare me.
Spare me indeed. And, you know, I mean, I've been sort of long advocating that those pro-Palestine marches should have been banned, as they had been in France for a long time now, because without doubt, so many of the entities involved in the coordination and the curation of those marches will have very suspect connections. And then you've got a load of, you know, leftist posh kids who go along with it because they're actually numbskulls. But, you know, perhaps actually in being able to exercise their chaos on our streets, it's given the UK security services the ability to watch who's on them, to monitor them, to track some of these movements.
Yeah, not only that, but it's counterproductive to actually winning people over to their cause. I think one thing you realise with these stupid leftist protesters is it's never actually about persuasion. It is about them feeling warm and fuzzy inside, and that they're doing their bit to try and save the world, whether it be climate change or the Middle East, and it gives them a sense of purpose in an otherwise unsuccessful, unfulfilled life. That's what this is really all about. It is egotistical virtue signalling. It is not in any way a practical attempt to try and make change in the world.
I've often wondered, Will, and I don't know if you've ever looked into this organisation, the Socialist Workers' Party, right? They're always there. If there's any sort of protest or activism that's basically against the interests of the United Kingdom, up they pop with their placards, with their stalls, with all their leaflets. They can churn around some sort of Corex board and sort of, you know, posters and all that really quickly. They must have printing presses up and down the country and some sort of crystal ball, because the stop bombing Iran was hot off the presses with a moment's notice. I kind of wonder where their funding comes from.
Yeah, it's a very good question, but it's also a very interesting point that these people just seem to latch on to every trendy leftist cause of the moment. I love that word, the omni cause. You see it with, you know, that little goblin Greta Thunberg. You know, she just moves seamlessly from climate change through to Palestine. You know, I'm sure she'll be on trans rights next when the Palestine thing runs its course. These people all just have the same worldview that is all entirely and simplistically based around oppressor v oppressed. And that is it in a nutshell.
You've made me want to sort of pick up on the Greta Thunberg thing, because I love the fact that she's basically just blown herself up now. And all of those sad, sick, weird, warped
It is an interesting choice of words when you're talking about Palestinian terrorists.
All those sad, weird, warped world leaders who sort of held her up like, you know, was it Rafiki did to Simba at the start of The Lion King? Oh, the Oracle! You know, invited along to the UN, this, that and the other. Next thing, she's wearing a keffiyeh, trying to go into a war zone, and then claiming that Israel's taken a hostage, which is the most disgusting, disgraceful suggestions to have made in the context of everything. And you kind of, you know, I hope that people who sat there, Antonio Guterres or whoever else, who sort of welcomed her, and even people like Starmer, isn't she wonderful? Isn't she wise? No, she's a weird, you know, odd-faced little noxious child.
Yeah.
She isn't some sort of second coming, and she is no oracle.
Yeah.
I just hope that now, you know.
Well, do you remember that cracking clip where you saw Trump, I think, at a particular conference or world event, where you had Greta Thunberg in the background? She sees Trump coming and goes, obviously, this is my moment to stick it to the American president. She has this eager look on her face, and then Trump just kind of sees her in the corner of his eye, and then just walks past and swaggers and goes,
what would
"You're
it
not
be brilliant
worth
if
my
he came
time."
and just gave her a noogie and then was like, see you later. Oh, anyway, listen, guys, we're going to go to an advert break now. Then we are going to talk about some UK domestic news, because get this, the NHS is so overburdened. Not only is it sending patients to cut those waiting lists to private hospitals in and around the UK, it's now flying people for treatment over to other countries, including Poland, Lithuania and the Czech Republic. I mean, really, is our health service that on our knees that we've got to send people abroad for their operations? Apparently so. If you want to talk about anything that we've been talking about today, keep those messages coming in. There is lots to get through. Blimey, O'Reilly, you've been messaging me a lot, haven't you? You're wide awake and enjoying this battle, aren't you? You love that bunker buster bomb as much as I do, don't you? Or do you not? 0344 499 1000 is the number if you'd like to send me a WhatsApp or leave me a voice note. 87222 is the number if you want to send me a text message. If you're going to do that, you've got to write the word talk before you send your message. You can also give me a phone call, 0344 499 1000. Tommy is ready to take your call. I can see him on the blower right now. Someone's called in already. And he will take your details when the time is right. Patch you through to the studio. We are that efficient, and it's all your normal network rate. So basically, don't cost you a fig, does it? Get involved. Right. Unfortunately, I cost a fig, which is why we've got to have commercials. We're going to roll those now, and I'm back in the aftermath.
They need to stop enrichment, and the choice for the Iranians is to have the capacity or to continue enriching uranium at home or surviving. This is the way where the matters rest at this point. Trump is hoping that in the course of the next week or so, as a result of the discussions that began with the Europeans in Geneva yesterday, that some kind of a formula can be found.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back. Well, in just a moment, we are going to be talking about the fact that the NHS is sending patients abroad. But let's take a call first, because I have a feeling that the call's going to be in relation to the big overnight news that the bunker buster bombs have blitzed the underground evil weapons-making plants of the Iranian regime. Let's speak to Steve, who's in Leeds. Good morning to you, Steve.
Good morning, Alex. How are you?
I am blimmin' happy. Hurrah! Someone's finally gone and done something to those mad beardy weirdies over in Tehran. I love it.
I agree, but the thing I want to know is this bombing of Iran is an existential threat in the UK. We've imported 150,000 unknown men. Some of them will support the Iranian regime. We've got a massive population of people in the UK who are Islamic fundamentalists who support the Iranian regime. We've already had 2 people go onto a military base. Thank God they only used paint and not a suicide bomb. And why hasn't the Prime Minister called a Cobra meeting, up the alert status of all defence bases in the UK, And where's David Lammy in all this?
Oh, David Lammy, I mean, we'd rather not know where David Lammy is, hopefully locked in a cupboard somewhere with a bag on his head. But it's interesting you mentioned that because, of course, there were direct threats from the IRGC saying that there are sleeper cells in Britain and they will target you if you get involved in all of this. Of course, Starmer, relatively lily-livered, as per usual. He thinks he's a great man of diplomacy, Mr. Geopolitics. He's more geo-no. But we also learnt the other day that a Brit was caught spying in Cyprus on behalf of the Iranian regime. But having spoken to someone from the intelligence services, I have been reassured that actually, don't worry, we're across all of them. I mean, Will, we know Iran have capabilities in this country. We know they have used them to commit arson attacks, to plot a bomb attack against the Israeli embassy. Now one of their operatives has been caught spying on behalf of the regime in Cyprus. Should we be worried? What do you think that the PM should be waking up this morning and albeit on a Sunday saying, right, folks, let's get back together. We now live in even more uncertain times.
Yeah, it's not just...
yeah, Karen, Steve.
I think the PM needs to realise that, remember, Iran has three Satans. Israel, the great Satan America, and their puppet, the UK.
Yeah, we are a little Satan.
Not France, not Germany, not Belgium. UK, America... and Israel.
I wear it with a badge of pride.
Yeah, so this is all about this background anger that's there. Now, remember, if an Iranian sets off a suicide bomb in the streets of Britain, that could be the spark that sparks off mass discontent amongst the population. It could be the final straw.
I totally agree, and you're right about the open borders and who on earth we have transported to this country. We do know of the 3 Iranian nationals that were arrested with the bomb plot against the Israeli embassy. At least 2 had come over on small boats. But perhaps, do you think this is a reason why, Will, that Sir Keir Starmer has been rather woolly about all of this? Well, we just want de-escalation, because he knows that we are a viper's nest of potential terror cells in this country, that actually any UK reaction, any, candid view on the UK being involved in all of this militarily would provoke trouble on our own shores.
I think that's part of it, but I think the bigger part is that the UK foreign policy is now effectively dictated by the will of 1.5 Muslim votes in the United Kingdom, and that is what Keir Starmer and the Labor Party are relying upon in order to maintain their popularity amongst their so-called multicultural base. This is the reality. Steve has hit the nail on the head. We have imported hundreds and thousands of people into this country who despise the values and the history of the United Kingdom. That's the reality. The uncomfortable truth is that Islam is not compatible with a Western liberal democracy, and we need to be very careful in coming days, weeks and months that the types of sectarian violence which is so commonplace in the Middle East does not spill out onto the shores of this country. And I have very grave fears that it may, because too many people think of themselves as being Islamic first, or being, from their country of origin in the Middle East first, as opposed to being a citizen or a resident of the United Kingdom first.
It's funny when you talk about the Ummah protecting itself, the people of the Muslim considering themselves Muslim first. When you look at some of the political voices who reacted negatively to what Donald Trump has done, of course, you've got Hamza Yousaf. There he is,
how did a country that went from being led by William Wallace go to being led by that man? What an extraordinary example of civilisational decline that is.
Do you remember when it was like was it COP or something? He went to have cheeky little sidebars with Erdogan all about the Middle East, and he was sort of, on the blower giving money. He sent, was it quarter of no, so 250 million, or sent a lot of money from the Scottish government over to UNRWA after October the 7th. And it was like, really?
But you know what really infuriates me when I see these videos from Hamza Yousaf, which pop up every day about Gaza or the Middle East, is, I don't remember any videos about the drugs crisis in Scotland. I don't remember any videos about the incredibly basket case Scottish economy. I don't remember any videos about the actual problems facing Scotland, of which there are many, because this so much easier to virtue signal as a ineffective leader, for Scotland than it is to actually solve the really hard, difficult things at home. And Keir Starmer's doing the same thing. It's really easy to be an international
he loves
statement.
hopping on a plane, doesn't he, and going to some sort of summit.
It's easy. It's easy to say the kind of grand narrative. It's easy to do your kind of B-grade Churchill impression. It's really hard to grow an economy. It's really hard to try and bring together a country which is fracturing at the seams internally. It is the laziness of it that really annoys me.
Starmer, he just looks like someone who's He's almost like a tornado chaser, isn't he? You know, he's someone who's in the aftermath of everything, running around, looking at how to react. People were saying, people have said in the press that Starmer waited to get advice on what the UK's response should be in terms of the geopolitics from Lord Hermer, the Attorney General, a man who has represented every single enemy of the state, basically, in his hinterland as a barrister. He's picked his clients with some alacrity, and they all seem to not particularly share the values of the Western world. But, you know, that to me is not showing leadership, because what a Prime Minister does is say, this is what we're going to do geopolitically, this is our strategy, this is our foreign policy. Then they turn to the Attorney General and say, you now have to legally back this up and justify it. Not go to the Attorney General and go, what does international law tell me what to do? It doesn't. International law doesn't tell you what to do in foreign policy, you absolute wet blanket.
Well, this is the thing
it's alarming.
Well, this is the thing about an empty vessel. It can be filled with whatever is the latest trend of the moment. And this is why he was the first person to follow Black Lives Matter. This is why he's followed all of those trendy causes during the nutter period on the left between 2016 to 2024. He doesn't have a guiding principle or ideology of his own, so he follows whatever the left is telling him to say. And this is what people are so fed up with. And this is the tragedy of Starmer. Well, one of the tragedies of Starmer is he is so the wrong man for this moment. When people are sick of those sorts of technocratic, nothing, lack of conviction politicians, he is the most technocratic, nothingy, lack of conviction politician that we have ever seen in this country. He's completely out of touch with the mood of the moment.
I would imagine a very good person to have around as your leader to do legal manoeuvres when it comes to, I don't know, covering up grooming gangs and things like that. That's where I think he probably comes into his own. Let's read some messages now. Mary in Kent says, good morning, Alex. I think it was inevitable that America was going to bomb Iran when the news came out that Iran wasn't being compliant. What is wrong with this government yesterday in London? Not only have you got the idiots pro-Palestine, or should we say pro-Hamas, pro-Iranian protests on the streets of London, while all this is going on, Selina Scott, the 74-year-old newsreader, was mugged outside Waterstones by East Asian men. It seems to me that there is a certain type of people that are in control of the streets of London and other big cities. Well, this is, it kind of alludes to what you were saying. Who is in control? Have we got tail-wagging dog now in the UK? You were talking about the 1.5 million Muslim votes and the Labour Party being so scared of losing the support of that community who has propped up their sort of ballot support over decades now. And this government never stands up to Islam, ever. And you do have to wonder, you know, what are they actually doing to protect our interests, Western interests? Anne in Cannock says, well done, America, for bombing Iran, but where's Starmer? Get back to the UK and sort this country out. The boats are still coming. We can't take any more. Well, yeah, who's going to be on those boats now? That's what I want to know. Jane says, gin in my tea. What the gin in my tonic? I've got mixed feelings. I do think Iran needs to be put in its place. It's such a nightmare. Go Trump. And good morning, well done, America. They have just made the world a slightly safer place. The Iranian regime are pure evil, but not the Iranian people, who basically hate their rulers. That's Mark in Dorset.
Alex, do I have 30 seconds?
No. Yes, you do.
Oh,
you have
wonderful.
more than that. You've got, you can have a whole 4 minutes.
Wonderful. I want to pick up on that comment, who's going to be on those boats now, because I think this is actually going to be a tactic that the left and the Labour Party will use to justify their useless boats policy. They will now say it is push factors, which is why there are going to be more and more boats coming. It's because of the unstable situation in the Middle East, therefore it's completely reasonable and expected that you're going to see thousands and thousands more boats coming, and you've got to push back against that. There may be somewhat more push factors, but if you still have a strong border policy, there is no reason why a single boat has to be landing on the shores of this country. This is a question of political will. It is not a question that is outside the realms of being solved.
Well, you could declare a national emergency right now. You could have done that the minute we knew those 3 Iranians who put the bomb plot against Israel had come over on small boats. You just go national emergency. We're defending our borders. Off you go back to farm.
That's right. But this will be the line that will come from the Labour Party as well. There's nothing we can do, and there absolutely is.
Well, yeah, no, I agree. Malcolm in Hertfordshire says, about time the Mad Mullers were put back in their place in Taiwan. The big problem now is we have an ever-growing 5th column over here, which our silly, weak socialist shower won't deal with. Absolutely right. Morning, Alex. Really enjoying your weekend shows. Why, thank you. Donald is a sly old fox. What a brilliantly clever move. I'll decide in the next 2 weeks if we will bomb Iran, then wham, bam, thank you, man with his bunker buster bomb. Got to love the Donald, says Janice. I just love saying bunker buster bomb.
Yeah, it's the alliteration that really rolls off the tongue. It's wonderful.
So beautiful.
Yeah.
Morning, Alex. Great show. Love seeing Will on the morning show, says Michelle in Altrincham. Woke up to the news that Trump hasn't wasted any time and Tehran's been struck. Says it all, really. While the world dithers, he acts coffee raised and no apologies for it. We raised our coffee as well. There we go. Well done, the Donald. But you can't raise air.
Yeah,
raise some hand gel. There you go.
This has kind of awful kind of memories of COVID, unfortunately, so I'm not going to do that.
Hand gel, anything from COVID I would keep.
Oh, really?
Face masks were absolutely terrible, never wore one. But especially when you go into supermarkets, I don't like the idea of people mitting up my avocados with, like, dirty, germy hands.
But do you want hand sanitizer all over your avocados?
I much prefer hand sand than whatever else is on the sort of looters' fingers who go up and down raiding the shops on the thoroughfare of my borough in London.
Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah. Also, I get eczema and soap actually irritates it. Hand sand.
Yeah, I don't know whether I'm going too far telling the audience, but we were talking about your dry knees during the break.
We were talking about my Nivea. Phil Dave's going to bring in some Nivea so I can moisten my dry knees during the advert break. You'll be pleased to know. Anyway, the advert break that we are speaking about is imminent, but don't go anywhere because my departure is not. I'm with you all the way through until 10 o'clock this morning. So much to talk about. When we come back after this, Will and I are going to be talking about the fact that the NHS are sending patients abroad for their ops.
Shame.
That is how bad things are in this country. Don't go anywhere. We're back just after this.
I can announce this government will begin the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War. We will deliver our commitment to spend 2.5% of GDP on defence, but we will bring it forward so we reach that level in 2027.
The answer from European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
On Saturday, we also agreed a new £2.2 billion loan for Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sends his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to you?
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
I will do.
I've got to tell him what your reaction is, so I need to know. I need to know.
He is a great gentleman. A great, great gentleman. He said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time, and he better not be right. Well, I just think he should be more appreciative because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us because, as you know, that's right there. That's the border.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
You're gambling with a lot of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, hello there. Good morning to you. It is just gone 7 o'clock in the morning. This is Alex Phillips with you all the way through until 10 a.m. on what I think in the future is going to be remembered as a very historic day, I personally think, for all of the right reasons. We've woken up to find that after Donald Trump has said he was going to contemplate over the next 2 weeks whether he was going to intervene in Israel's bombardment of Iran, saying, look, we give you a chance to negotiate. If you want to get round the table, do it now. You better step down. You better make these promises. Iran went to meet European leaders in Geneva and, frankly, wanted to take a mile when an inch was being offered. And then Donald Trump overnight has sent 6 B-1 bombers over to Iran, striking various targets, military sites, uranium enrichment plants, including Fordow, deep underground, using bunker buster bombs, which can delve to, I think, a subterranean level of, is it 200 feet, managing to take out weapon systems deep underneath the mountains that were previously thought unstrikable. Here to tell us more is Colonel Richard Kemp, former commander of the British forces in Afghanistan. Richard, now there'll be people this morning going, this is terrible, Trump shouldn't have been interventionist. What happened last time when America got involved in the Middle East as we had these sort of decades-long conflicts that took American lives, and frankly the Taliban came back into power anyway, etc. This, however, to me seems very different. It's not a ground invasion. It is taking out military capabilities with strategic precision, and I personally think making the world safer. Am I wrong in any way with that analysis?
No, you're right in every way. This is not, as some people have claimed, the start of a forever war, another forever war. This is, if anything, it's going to end a forever war, which started in 1979 when the Islamic Revolution declared death to America, death to Israel, death to Britain. And they've turned those words into violent actions in the period since then. They were now on the cusp of gaining nuclear weapons, and it had to be dealt with. There is no discussion, as far as I'm aware, anywhere of boots on the ground, except for maybe small number of Israeli special forces. There's no suggestion that this is designed to create regime change, although it might achieve that. So no, this is completely different to any of the other conflicts we've seen recently. It's precise, it's extremely well planned, and it's, I think, probably decisive against the Iranian nuclear program, even if it's not the end. You know, it may not be the end of it, because Iran might try and resurrect it.
Do we think that Iran have any capabilities to respond in any meaningful way other than their usual sort of theatrical optics way of chucking a load of ballistic and hypersonic missiles over the border to Israel, many of which hopefully, in touchwood, and we pray continue to be intercepted? Does Iran have any allies who might want to respond right now? We know that their proxies have been rather diminished over the course of recent months leading up to the bombardment of their military bases and nuclear sites, but are there other nations that might wade into the battle now?
Well, here in Tel Aviv, where I am now, we've seen the initial reaction of Iran, which is essentially a continuation of ballistic missile fire. And my understanding this morning is there were something like 10 impacts. In other words, of about 30 rockets that were fired, something like 10 actually landed in Israel. And I gather there's reports of injuries, not deaths so far. That will no doubt continue against Israel for the time being, at least. There's every probability, I think, that Iran might, either directly or more likely using its proxies, lash out against possibly Gulf states, oil installations, possibly US bases in the Middle East. And already, you know, the Houthis, which allegedly had a ceasefire with the US, have said that's off now as a result of this. There are other proxies. The Houthis are not a major threat. They can be dealt with and they can be contained. The other Iranian proxies are pretty much neutralized. And there's no country that's going to come to Iran's assistance. The other Middle Eastern states are fully behind Israel and the US in these strikes on Iran. Iran's nuclear program threatened them just as much as it threatened Israel. And countries like China and Russia, which are allies of Iran, they may help in some different ways, but I'm pretty confident that neither of them are likely to get engaged in any direct military way in support of Iran.
Do you get the impression that the UK, if not other leaders in Europe, were rather excluded from this strategy, who might not have been notified in advance about Donald Trump's intention to proceed in bombing Iran? Because I got the impression that the European leaders were all sent off to have a conflab with the Iranian foreign minister over in Geneva. At the same time, Donald Trump was in the Situation Room planning exactly this with Netanyahu, and perhaps quite deliberately, Sir Keir Starmer's been frozen out because he's been seen as potentially not having much conviction, at least not the conviction in the right direction when it comes to Western foreign policy.
Well, my understanding is that Keir Starmer was asked by President Trump if Britain would be prepared to support the United States, maybe join in the United States in its offensive action against Iran, and hasn't done so. And his Attorney General allegedly has, or not allegedly, but I believe has said it would be illegal to do so, which of course is utter nonsense. So that shows where Britain is now. Britain, which was once an important player on the world stage, if not a major power, but still an important player on the world stage, apparently refused to support its number one ally, America, in defending another ally, Israel, and also in protecting the world from nuclear weapons. That would indicate to me the trajectory that Britain is on, which is downward. And I think there's every likelihood that President Trump didn't notify Britain in advance. I don't know that. And I think the United States will also be reviewing its relationship with Britain in various different ways, and that could include potentially, maybe even freezing Britain out of the Five Eyes intelligence alliance, which is extremely important to us. I think, I don't think President Trump will take lightly the idea of one of its major allies refusing to support it when it needed. I don't know if Keir Starmer has made any response to these attacks today, but I mean, Australia, for example, which is kind of on the same, its current government is on the same lines as Britain, they've come out strongly supporting what President Trump did.
Wow, it'll be interesting. We'll keep our eye on the social media accounts of X and look out for any communiques from Downing Street. I'm absolutely shocked and appalled. I mean, I had heard that it was Lord Helmer, the Attorney General, who had said, as you pointed out, that intervention or aiding and abetting America would be illegal under international law. Like you said, a load of baloney. The fact that this man seems to be taking on all the wrong battles, it seems to be supporting enemies of the British state, and seems as well to have a puppet-like control over Sir Keir Starmer. He seems to be the one to give that international legal advice of handing Diego Garcia over to Mauritius. And now what you're saying, that America might even consider freezing us out of Five Eyes, that is a deeply, deeply terrifying trajectory.
It is, and it'd be very, very dangerous for us. I'm merely speculating, but it's one of the things America might consider doing if it doesn't feel that Britain remains worthy of the kind of close relationship it's had up until now. And of course, there are other options as well, including maybe reconsidering the trade deal between the US and Britain. And I think that deal and various other, shall we say, favours that the US have done to the UK have been based on a strong security alliance as well as the other relationships. And so I think, President Trump is not one to ignore a refusal by Britain to cooperate. And we shouldn't forget as well, we're in the crosshairs of the Ayatollahs ourselves. Britain, America, Israel are the three enemies. America's the great Satan, Israel are the two little Satans. That's been the case since 1979. There are Iranian sleeper cells present in the UK and other European countries, which were put in place many years ago for exactly this scenario. So the UK, we certainly shouldn't sit back on our haunches and think that because we didn't join this strike, that doesn't make any difference to the Ayatollahs. If they decide that the time is right to have a go at us, then they will attempt terrorist attacks in the UK.
Blimey. Colonel Sir Richard Kemp, thank you ever so much. Brilliant to have you on, former commander of the British forces in Afghanistan. I mean, the last time Eurofighter Typhoons did take part in intercepting missiles that were headed for Israel, one could say that is, in a defensive poise of a Western ally. But I mean, it does seem to me that the tail must be wagging the dog at this point. That Lord Hermer has got to go. He has no right to be there. He is Sir Keir Starmer's leftist chum from his old days in Chambers, who seemed to pick all the wrong battles, gives absolutely bunkum advice, seems to have way too much influence. His position should be to justify the foreign policy that the Prime Minister takes, not to instruct it. And I worry that if Britain is being reticent about joining in this most important operation and saying this is where we stand on the world stage, we're part of the Western Axis, we are going to show collective power through might, and instead says, well, if we do that, we might upset Muslims in this country and then we might be at risk of reprisals. That, to me, shows how far down the proverbial creek we've gone without a paddle.
Yeah, that's right. Well, if there is one guiding ideology of these people, it is the religion of multiculturalism, and that is something that they ascribe to. But the other thing which is so frustrating when you hear the Lord Hermers of this world is they always seem to put something before the interests of the United Kingdom, whether it is international human rights law, whether it is the climate change movement, whether it is any number of things. It always seems to be something that takes precedence over the United Kingdom, which is why even the people who don't like Donald Trump have a begrudging respect for the fact that he unashamedly puts his country first. And again, this is something which, again, is fueling the reform movement in this country, is that people, I don't even think they care about the policies as much as just someone with a firm grasp and saying, I want to put the United Kingdom first.
They want a man in the room. They want an adult, the British people. They want somebody who looks like they could bang their fist on a table and say, this is what we're going to do. Put that in your shisha pipe and smoke it, my friend. That just came out of that one. I quite liked it. Yeah, I'm glad you like that too. Anyway, let's do a little bit of domestic news. We keep promising to do this and we keep not getting round to it. So let us talk about it now. I'm just so excited about bombing Iran. I just can't help myself this morning. But let's talk about the fact that the NHS is paying to send rising numbers of British patients abroad for treatment. Waiting lists in England hit record highs. We've also heard the other day that consultants might go on strike if they're not given a 35% pay rise. Quelle surprise, you give these unions an inch, they're going to want to take a mile. But patients are being sent to countries, or at least the health services funding treatments, in countries such as Poland, Lithuania and the Czech Republic. And the number of people having procedures overseas has jumped by 42% in just 2 years. Now, I'll tell you this much, Will, right? If I went down my local hospital because I needed some sort of, bits and bobs whacked into my body or taken out of it, you never know which way around it's going to go with a surgery, and they said, oh, do you know what, we're going to send you to Belgium instead, I would be sort of doing like air guitars of joy, because when I fell over and smashed up my ankle on the cobbled streets of Brussels and had to have Meccano inserted into my ankle overnight, Belgian hospitals are the absolute beast. They're amazing. You had little food served under a cloche. I had my own private room. I could choose whether I had, sort of that thing where they cut off all your feeling and whatever, the sort of anaesthetic in your spine. I was like, no, I don't want to hear people Fisher pricing my leg with tools. Thank you very much. Put me under. But it's brilliant. My experience of healthcare in Belgium was absolutely excellent. And I kind of feel if I'd had the same ankle operation in the United Kingdom, I'd probably have some sort of bearded man in a nurse's, outfit, with a rainbow lanyard, asking me what gender I was, and probably chopping off my leg instead of repairing it.
Well, that's right. And look, it's just more money on the country credit card now. What's a few more 100 million making a difference at this stage of economic disaster? There is an interesting irony here, and I laugh so I may not cry, and that is we are importing hundreds of thousands of legal and illegal immigrants to overload the NHS, and the solution to that is then to fly out British people on the planes out of the country to then get their health solved. The warped logic could only happen in these crazy times in which we live. But the other thing is, the NHS has officially become a Ponzi scheme. We say, well, we don't have the people to be able to, the nurses and the doctors to be able to help people in the NHS, so you bring in more people from overseas who then bring in 3 or 4 relatives, which then overloads the NHS. So then they say, well, we need more nurses and doctors, so they bring in their families, and then it gets worse, and then it gets worse, and that's when you lead to outrageous policies like putting people on ships, and maybe I think they're probably planes these days, and then sending them off to Europe to get their health needs sorted.
We're probably going to end up with that. What is that ship that goes about the place and parks off the coast of Libya to do operations? Netherlands. That thing's probably going to pull up and replace the Bibby Stockholm at some point, isn't it?
Sans Frontier, Medicine Sans Frontier.
It's some sort of
Doctors
it's
Without
called
Borders.
like HMS Hope or something, isn't it? Some sort of medical ship that goes and parks itself off the coast of Africa.
Again, off the coast of third world countries, which increasingly this country is represented.
Yeah, the Bibby Stockholm reappropriated into a Nightingale hospital soon. No, but it is deeply alarming, and the problem that I can see going forward is everything this government's about to do. Interestingly, actually, Colonel Richard Kemp there talking about Iran may retaliate by striking Gulf oil refineries. Well, that would kibosh any sort of plans of growth by Rachel Reeves or any sort of calculations which have to be marked off by the OBR. Because if all of a sudden oil refiners are struck, bam, that's the cost of fuel going up massively globally. That is global inflation. Same with the Houthis targeting cargo ships in the Red Sea. And then, any sort of extra money that was put to one side for the NHS, that's all going to go on the hospital's bills to pay for the lights to stay on and the, generators to be there when the lights go off.
Well, here's my question to you. We already have the most expensive energy in the Western world, and if something like that was to happen, the energy prices would rise further. Do you think there is a point, any sort of point, where eventually they will say, we can't sustain this net zero madness?
Well, these nutters, no, they love it. They love the net zero madness. That point was about 10 years ago or something in my mind. That point has come and gone.
Yeah.
That point was when you were taking the winter fuel allowance away from pensioners, when you suddenly go, yeah, do you know what, highest energy bills in the world, maybe we should have chucked a load of concrete down our oil wells.
Yeah.
But no, that is not, doesn't seem to be the direction of travel.
Well, look, we've got an economic illiterate as a chancellor, and we've got an eco-zealot as the environment minister, and increasingly their goals are at odds with each other. Only one of them can survive this, and it's like the battle of the mediocrities. So it will be curious to see which one of them ends up winning out, because both of them won't be in their positions come the next election.
Well, it's all right. We know who runs the country. It's Lord Hermer, and he probably loves the fact that we're having to import fossil fuels from sort of dodgy regimes.
Yeah.
Please, someone, just get rid of Lord Hermer. I don't mean like that. But please, Keir, change your Attorney General already to someone who likes Britain. OK, we're going to take a short break now, and perhaps if Labour Party were to look at the current polling, they might suddenly realise they need a radical change of tack, because a new poll suggests that Reform are on course to win at the next general election, and not just by a little margin, but by a margin that makes the Labour landslide look like a snowflake rolling down Everest. Right, we're going to be taking a short break now, but when we come back after that, we're going to be discussing the latest in domestic politics and the landscape with Peter Barnes, political commentator. That's after this.
Very large airfield.
Yeah. It's the most distressing, horrible thing you can ever go to. My wife was begging to die at one point. There has to be some kind of law that allows it. I don't know whether I could have allowed it or gone ahead with letting my wife go through this. But I wish people on both sides would take a little care. And I know it's a passionate thing. And if you went through this, what you suffered and what my wife suffered, perhaps you'd understand why the assisting dying bill might be a good thing.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, hello, welcome back. The magic of technology. Will's dad's just messaged from Australia to tell us that sort of medical boat that goes around the place parks off the coast of Libya to repair hair lips and provide abortions and stuff like that. It's called the Mercy Ship.
The Mercy Ship, that's right. G'day, Dad. If you're, well, we know you're watching.
What's your dad's name?
Wayne.
Wayne.
The world's worst name, unfortunately, but he's stuck with...
good in an Australian accent, though.
G'day, Wayne. Well, the one thing he is always very grateful for is at least his last name has an S-T-O-N on the end of it, and it's not King.
What?
Wayne King.
Oh, blimey. Oh, I got it. Yeah, no, I was so to get it. Tech Op said in my ear, let's not go there. I was
Sorry, guys, we went there.
It's a bit more for me. I didn't get it the first time. There you are, never mind.
The Tech Op's guys are a bit quicker on the ball.
Yeah, thank God. That's because Tech Op, Phil Davis got out to, I don't know, do something important. So Tech Op's now in charge of making sure we don't get Ofcoms. And he's like, no!
Well, it's a name. It's a name. It's a name. No, I think that's Ofcom defensible.
Right, now... talking about laughing matters and those that are not, surely the latest polling to come out is not a laughing matter for neither of the legacy parties, because an Ipsos opinion poll has put Reform on 34%, 9 points ahead of Labour on 25%. I'm amazed they're still on 25%. Who are those people?
Yeah, that's right.
And the Conservatives a distant third on just 15%. Now, if you break that down into what that would look like, how that would convert into seats, and this is where you've got to hold on to your hats, ladies and gentlemen, because this is quite an astonishing array that's predicted. Reform would win in excess of 400 seats, giving the party a majority of almost 200. Labour would be on 140. Tories would be on 10. Wow. Bye-bye. That seems like a cataclysmic event for the Conservative Party, were that to come to pass. Let's speak now to Peter Barnes, political commentator. Peter, do you think this is going to come to pass? Because there'll be people out there going, we're a good 4 years away from a general election. This is a protest vote. All of this can change. I think 34%, 9 points ahead of the Labour Party, gazillion points ahead of the Conservatives. That's no longer a protest vote. This is basically turning a two-party state into a one-party state.
Well, I would agree with you. However, this is an outlier of a poll. If we look at Survation, YouGov, they all show that this is way out of the trend, I'm afraid. But also, we have to look at when this poll was done and also how it was done. They changed their methodology from being phone-based to a kind of online panel. That obviously makes a huge change. But also, this was done at a time when Sarah Poacher very bravely got up in the House of Commons and talked about banning the burqa. I believe this poll is actually a reflection of support for the issue, not the party, because I would remind you, 2 days after this poll was taken, Reform went into, its typical behaviour. Zia Yusuf decided, everybody said he was thin-skinned and a little bit too tired to take on changing the country. I hate to break it to people, but I don't think Reform are surging that far ahead. I think they are definitely leading, but they're not this far ahead. You make a really good point, Alex, about the Labour Party haven't gone anywhere. They're still polling incredibly well. We don't know how well the Reform will do in many Labour areas because of the issues of Angela Rayner's rather dodgy local elections decisions. But it will be very interesting to see how the Conservatives react to this, because I have long believed that the big problem Reform are going to have, if they do win a general election, is nobody turned out to vote for them. We all sit here, all three of us, including Will, hi Will, we all say Keir Starmer does not have a mandate. He does not have this great victory. I think Nigel Farage would probably win, maybe with a bigger majority, with fewer people turning out.
Do you think that's the case? Because I'll tell you what, Peter, and I'm just going to throw in my two-bit ear from the position of somebody who comes from that particular stable, who was there as Nigel's right-hand woman during the UKIP years and then was a Brexit Party MEP myself, and actually was the person who managed to cajole all of the Brexit Party MEPs to build up Reform UK before I then became a broadcaster and pretended that I have no... I wouldn't do that job for love nor money. I'd rather have the 3 a.m. alarm and let David Bull get on with it.
Honestly. I'd join if you actually got involved.
Oh, would you? Oh, well, there we go. There's motivation. Who's going to do this job then? Huh? Will, there you go. You're going to push me out of this seat. He's eyeing up his phone.
That would be
he wants to use up the phone already.
That would be a career-limiting move.
But my view is this, Peter, is interesting. But I think that when it comes to looking at when we've done elections in time past, and as a political strategist, one thing you do is you don't just look at the people who want to vote for you, but of those votes, the people who are likely to actually go to a polling station.
That's a huge...
And you build 100%. Your get out to the vote strategy on that grounds. And one thing that Nigel Farage parties have always understood is when people say they're going to vote for Nigel Farage, it is with a huge amount of conviction. Because when people want change, they actually go and do something about it. When people just can't be bothered because they don't like anyone, they're more likely to stay at home. So I'm not sure your reading of whether or not this is going to be a lower vote share.
You dropped the C word, just to follow on from your Wayne joke, that it's very interesting. The change comment.
Right,
isn't it?
you are.
And, you know, the change. The problem is we had the last guy who's in at the minute. He's kept promising that all the time. And now he's in power. And that change isn't exactly what people voted for at all. The reality is Reform have still no policy platform. I would remind people, just a year ago this month, Nigel Farage got up in front of the press and said most polling companies are radically dishonest. So are they dishonest when they're not leading, but they're honest when they are? This is, again, I think this shows a deep immaturity of the political party, and I think it does need to grow up a lot, because I would remind people Nigel Farage was about to add £2 billion to the national debt by scrapping the two-child tax credit, which would go to the very people that, you know, people ourselves criticise for coming to the UK and taking advantage of. He is playing both sides, like Keir Starmer. He's using the change word, like Keir Starmer, and he has no policies, like Keir Starmer. I hate to break it to people, but you want to complain about the Uni Party? Reform are every element of Uni Party right now.
Do you think that's?
I don't want them to be.
Do you think that's true, Will? Because, you know, I'd say at this point in an election cycle, we're at vibes o'clock. We're not about to, you know, print. No party is about to print full manifestos that have been costed when you're 4 years away from a general election, because you hang yourself by your own petard. You make a promise that later on you have to U-turn on. But if this is vibes o'clock, and frankly speaking, I actually think most general elections are vibes o'clock. Actually, I don't think many people sit there and spool through a manifesto other than the odd journalist. And when it comes to vibes o'clock, the issue that everybody really gives us stuff about right now, demographic change, open borders, and you can't out Farage the Farage on those issues as hard as, you know, Robert Ozempic tries. I just don't think he's going to be able to kid anybody that he's more Nigel than Nigel.
Yeah, Peter, this is the problem that you have, mate, and that is that I probably agree with you that the Reform policy platform is half-baked, but no one cares. Honestly, I think
they should.
They should. In a better world, they would, mate. In a better world, they would. But after 30 years of this management...
Yeah. Okay, again, the Conservatives did something is not an argument in favour of reform in any way, shape or form. And if you want to change politics, root and branch, you should be demanding more from reform than we are seeing right now.
Mate, we can have an intellectual debate all we want. The fact of the matter is the people who are actually going to make the decisions don't care. And for you to say that voter turnout is somehow a net positive for the Conservatives relative to reform...
Oh, no, I never said that at all.
Like
never
the level...
they're in a complete wilderness, and they deserve to be in one. I've never.
The level of apathy is extraordinary. Extraordinary.
My prediction is this, boys. Mark my words. What will happen, I believe, over coming months is you will see the beginnings of defections when the Conservatives realise that that ship is sinking and sinking fast, and that when that particular wall is breached, that when that dam bursts, I wonder how many will come out of it. I think we could be in for an interesting period in politics. We're already in an interesting period in politics, aren't we?
Well, they do say, may you live in interesting times is not a compliment. Right, it's actually an omen.
But there's a political risk there. There's a political risk there, right, for the Reform Party, which is if they do start to take more and more Conservatives, surely people start to say, well, aren't you becoming, to Peter's point, the uni party that you are railing against?
I agree with that as well. I agree with that.
And the online base of reform have railed against this for a long time. Sarah Pocham, for example, is a prime example. You know, she was always in favour of the trans stuff. She turned up at all these events and all the rest of it. You had Andrea Jenkins is in favour of offshore wind farms, rather contrary to most net zero policies of reform. You know, again, the message discipline isn't there. The structure isn't there. Zia Youssef, the former chairman, who is still the part owner, because it is not a political party. It's still a private company, despite all these magical 5-star lawyers all running around fixing the problem, still yet to do anything. Again, I'm not saying anything to stop reform. I'm in favor of everything they want to do. I just would like some grown-ups to actually do it and realize they've got a lot of work to do and stop saying that they're going to be in government. This poll is an outlier, and I'm sorry, it was done at a time of the issue, not the party. And again, the base just keeps fracturing again and again and again. It's not being held together.
I don't know if that's true, Peter. And actually, if it's being done on the basis of an issue, it is Reform who's owning that issue. And that is it. And if we're having an issues-based election, then I think that is where Reform can really maximise.
Well, they would again split down the middle in terms of being in favour or against it. So it's not really leadership on that. On assisted dying, they were split down the middle.
But
abortion. We don't even know how Farage voted. There's rumours he abstained.
But all political parties allowed that to be a matter of personal choice, and that wasn't whipped, as is the right way to proceed on those particular moral issues. Listen, we've got to have to. I know you want to throw some things. We've got to go to break soon.
Yeah, just very quickly, Peter, I just want to understand from your perspective, where is the lane for the Conservative Party now? If you have Reform taking the kind of populist right position, if you have the Labor Party taking the loony left position, and if you have the Lib Dems in their wet centrist, soft left position, I can't really see where the lane is for the Conservative Party from a electoral strategy perspective.
It's because the next issues of the general election are not going to be in immigration. It is the economy, and the Conservatives position themselves as fiscal conservatives and actually don't start throwing the money around just to try and beat the other guy. That's what Farage did. And let's not forget this kind of Bitcoin thing that was also going on at the same time. Isn't it funny? He gave a speech for Bitcoin, and now suddenly they want a flat tax of 10%. In any other political party in that series of events, all three of us would have been mental. Yeah. And again, we're not seeing the same standards held for Reform that we would any other political party.
Listen, we've got to go to an advert break now, but we're going to pick up on all of this after the break. Peter, if you want to stick around, we'll just resume this after the break. But invite other people to join us, because the next thing on my little programme here says calls and messages. So perhaps you're sitting there shouting at the radio right now, either at Will or at Peter or at me, and you'd like to hear your shouts echo around the universe. Well, you can do just that if you dial 03444991000. You can join the conversation after the break. I specifically want to ask this, actually, because Peter sort of jogged me into wondering this. He just said that immigration isn't going to be the big issue at the next election. It's going to be the economy. Without doubt, the cost of living is going to be a huge issue, because the Labour Party are not going to grow the economy, are they? Taxes are going to go up. We live in uncertain times, which will spike global inflation, and I can't see any particular strategy to dig us out of the bottom of what is a very deep fiscal well. But I have a feeling immigration and demographic change is still going to be the key issue. So I want to ask you this, if you had to pick between, close the borders, no more mass immigration, but it might harm the economy, or cost of living, but we're going to have to keep, say, a steady flow of 400,000 coming into the country every year, which one would you pick? I bet I know. I bet you've just answered it aloud. But if you want to be heard answering that, 03444991000 is the number to dial, or you can send me a WhatsApp on that number, or send me a text 8722. Right, talk before your message. Now, before we go to advert break, it is competition time, because here at Talk, we're giving you the chance to win a pair of Oasis tickets in Manchester on July the 19th. And we're also going to stick you in a lovely hotel and give you 5k to spend. Here's everything you need to know.
Alright, kid, you have to be over 18 to enter in the UK, excluding Northern Ireland, for the chance to win a pair of tickets to the most electrifying rock and roll reunion of the century, a hotel stay and £5,000 spending money. All you gotta do is text the word Oasis to 83338 by Monday the 7th of July at 11 p.m. and you'll be entered into the draw to go supersonic this summer. Sorted. Right, here's all the legal stuff. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You've got to have the bill payer's permission, or post your name and number to Oasis Prize Draw, PO Box 3190, Colchester, CO2 8GP, to arrive by 5 p.m. on the 10th of July. This is a TalkSport limited promotion run on TalkSport, Talk and Virgin Radio UK stations. Full T's and C's at talksport.com.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is...
Well, welcome back. Welcome back to... Is Peter still with us, Phil? Did we keep it? Yes, we've got Peter still there. Will's still with me. I've got everyone hanging out with me today. Supposed to bin Will off about 20 minutes ago, and I was like, no, you stay.
Yeah.
You're now being held hostage, and Peter, you've been held hostage.
Cider later.
That is literally what I promised him.
Yeah. What did you just say?
Yeah. I said, you stay till 10 and I'll take you for an early morning pint, and we both know that that's going to be a pint of noxious apple juice. Let's read some messages, by the way, because that's what this segment is all about, and then we'll sort of carry on our political chit. Because I spotted one earlier that I was quite into reading. Now I can't find it. That's always the way it works, doesn't it? Here, this is the one that I thought was quite interesting. Morning, Alex and Will, and Peter, we'll add you in there. Great show. It's great Trump's acted. However, let's see how Putin reacts. Paul from Spain. What Putin going to do? You think he's going to run to the aid of Iran? Yeah. I don't think so. I actually think that what Trump has done is quite clever, because I think what he has done over the course of since becoming president, not that I endorse or condone his sucking up to the psycho in the Kremlin, but I think what he has done is driven a wedge now between Russia and Iran when it comes to foreign policy, and almost sort of cajoled Putin into going, right, pick your side. I know you've got this funny ally in the form of Iran, but you're part of Christendom. You've got to pick whether you're going to back the Tezers or whether you're going to back, essentially people who don't want psychos with beards having nuclear weapons. And I think Putin's found himself stuck between a rock and a hard... I can't imagine him coming out and saying much following this bombardment, but we will see.
Can I just say that I think Donald Trump just earned the Nobel Peace Prize last night. He has done more for global security than any other president in the last, 20 years, roughly? Yeah.
Yeah.
He's actually done something that the world needed to do. He actually put on his big boy pants and, led the free world.
Yeah.
What we saw last night was the inevitability of weakness from the West, their inability to get involved because they're too busy trying to work out what a woman is. Iran is a dangerous nation. It has destabilized the UK. It attacks us pretty much every day with cyber attacks and attacks the culture. And yet, we're supposed to go, we'll just say, please don't escalate. It's pathetic. What we saw from Starmer and David Lammy.
Oh, Starmer is beyond pathetic, which is why I'm surprised that 25%, according to this poll, still back him. But those are clearly the 25% with short fringes, not much clue about the world, who dress in Hessian sacks and carry placards and, wear lanyards and stuff like that. Yeah. There's too many of them in the country. Apparently 25% of the population are those people. But when it comes to everything else you're talking about, the fact that, Starmer's lily-livered, he always backs the leftist things, he's a sad little follower, he's getting down on that knee for BLM, he's celebrating Greta Thunberg like she's the, latest messiah. His judgment calls are all wrong because he's not a politician. And when you look at how unstable the world is, it seems to me that what populations do when the world is looking a little bit dicey is they go for somebody with a little bit of spine. They want somebody who seems more statesmanlike. And I would argue this, love him or loathe him, like his policies or dislike his policies, when it comes to the sort of person who can bang his hand on a desk and say, this is what Britain's going to do, no compromise, you get the impression that Nigel Farage is one of the only people in the Palace of Westminster with those sorts of cojones. He stood up to the EU. He managed to drag us out of that without even being elected as an MP. Yes, I know the Conservatives jump on the bandwagon and like to claim they got Brexit done, but we all know who Mr. Brexit really is. And at least he's someone who seems very decisive, who seems non-compromising, who's best mates with people like Donald Trump and would potentially stick it to Ursula von der Leyen while she ums and ahs over what the EU is going to do in terms of foreign policy. And that, no doubt, in 4 years' time is still going to look very attractive, isn't it?
Oh, I don't disagree. However, the problem you've got is reform is split on the issue of foreign intervention, and just because it's happening in a different bit of the world, it's got nothing to do with us.
So is the MAGA movement, though.
Yes, that is also why the MAGA movement is falling apart. Elon Musk and the kind of the tech bros are leaving. You've got Steve Bannon holding Trump as close as he can to keep him in line, and that's evidently failing. That is breaking apart. Again, as me and you, Alex, have talked many times, you can build a populist movement against something. Governing with it is very different, and I think Farage will have this problem.
Peter, factions are a reality of every political party.
Well, I was going to say, if the Tories are reduced to just 10 seats, perhaps they could actually agree with each other on something for once.
No. Oh, absolutely not. The 10 seats would probably have about 250 opinions on one thing. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. I mean, we call it sport at some point.
I know.
Yeah.
I think the problem is that's politics, and especially politics on the right, because the right is all about freedom, because the right is about, not sort of whipping everybody to all sort of walk in homogeny and act like many cogs in a machine. The problem is the right then bicker amongst themselves and fall out, whereas the left are sort of more able to whip themselves into submission.
This is a problem for Western political parties, Western right-wing political parties more generally. There is a former Prime Minister of Australia, John Howard, who had a wonderful term for what a right-wing party should be, and that is a broad church where you bring together social conservatives and classical liberals, and the thing that should bind them together are things like family, freedom, the rights of the individual. But that broad church in Australia, in the United Kingdom, in the US with Trump is actually blowing up now in many ways. And so right-wing political parties everywhere are having a tough time saying, what is the thing that keeps us together? And that's why you're seeing movements like Reform, like Trump, and now even fissures within those groups.
One assumes as well, Peter...
I don't disagree with that at all. Sorry, Alex.
One assumes as well, Peter, that one of the things that could potentially move the needle quite drastically with the electorate coming up over the course of the next 3 years is the national inquiry into grooming gangs. Now, if the parameters of that inquiry are broad enough to engulf the very people that it should be targeted on, I personally think, which are politicians, local level and, quite frankly, sitting around that cabinet table, and indeed heads of the police, social services and all the rest of it, and the diktats that they may have stuck to, and I'd say even worse, the deliberate, willful, cynical, sick cover-up of these most heinous of crimes, of sexual genocide is the way that I review it personally. I think if the parameters of that national inquiry stretch to where it needs to stretch, the Labour Party are going to be in serious trouble. And I think the Conservative Party will be dragged down in their wake. The one party that has got clean hands on all of this, because they weren't in any form of leadership at the time, and people would assume that if they had been, they would have done something about it, will be Reform. Now, I wonder, though, how much that national inquiry is going to be able to go to where it needs to go, because it seems to me there must have been behind-the-scenes pressure coming for a Labour cabinet on about that report, which is why I think certain leaks were coming out from her team, because she dug her heels and said, not under my watch are you going to try to mind what it is, the deal, what it needs to be investigated. And they were very unwilling, as we know, to have any sort of national inquiry, and for good reason, because I think that they're going to be in one hell of a lot of trouble. How much do you think that is going to play into Reform's hands?
Well, you've got the problem of Nigel Farage promising an inquiry and then backtracking on it, with of it having no material difference between the 2 days to when he said these things. So I think you've got a big problem there. But I will say, if this goes how it should go, I don't think there will be a Labour Party anymore. I think it will rip them out at the very core, as it rightly should do. However, my big fear is I think I know the kind of ending of the report already. I think it will be because of austerity, because of no start centres, because of David Cameron and those years, the local councils did not have the resources to do the job properly.
Rubbish.
That will be, I know it's rubbish, absolute nonsense, but that is my fear. And the fact that this is already creeped in, we've not even got into the room of the first day of the inquiry, my faith in this is very, very thin.
Well,
boy, can I just say, Baroness Casey is a national hero.
She is.
She is sat in front of that committee and told them everything they didn't want to hear. You could see the colour drain out of them, you know. And let us not forget that whilst Yvette Cooper's running around saying, aren't the Tories terrible? She was head of the Home Affairs Select Committee, one of the most powerful ones in Westminster, didn't say boo to a goose about this issue the entire time. I'm not taking lectures from her. I
think you're right. I think the Labour Party are going to be in a lot of trouble when it comes to things falling out of certain closets on this issue. I just want to... Oh, here we go. Talk about Starmer. He said something. He's done something. He's woken up and realised that there's stuff going on in the world, so we better react, Mr. React.
Who gave him a phone?
He's basically a non-nuclear reactor, isn't he? It's just a reactor. Sir Keir Starmer has said that Iran should return to the negotiating table following year off for crying out loud. Here he is. Lord Herm has sent that text on behalf of Starmer. Iran must come to the negotiating table. To negotiate what? Why should we negotiate with them? Yeah, what? No, by the
Blew
way,
off the table.
Yeah, exactly. Come to the negotiating table. We're going to stick this widget underneath your chair in about 10 seconds' time. Tick, tick, boom. But it's ridiculous. You can't negotiate with Iran. Have you not learned? I mean, it's just ridiculous.
You can't negotiate with terrorists.
You can't negotiate with terrorists. I've got a quick question for both of you guys, actually, before we go to advert break. Because I was speaking to my mate the other day going, how are they going to stop Farage? How are they going to do it? If the polling continues as it is, they can't throw scandals at him, I don't think, because after, Boris Johnson, this, that, no one cares anymore about those sorts of things. Can they trip him up on policy? Can they out-Farage him? Maybe they're going to try and do an Olaf like they've done against Marine Le Pen and use lawfare, but I don't think that would work either. Well, yeah, well, but my mate said this, and I suddenly went, oh my goodness, you've probably got this right. Which is what's in that Labour Party manifesto. That's right, extending the ballot to 16-year-olds and also potentially moving to a PR system. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Labour Party suddenly go, that was in our manifesto, we're going to have a little meeting at conference, oh look, that's what we're doing now, because now Reform are winning under first past the post. I reckon they can't win the game, they're just going to change the game. And I think that's frightening, because you'll end up with all the pro-Gaza MPs having their old little Islamist cult in Parliament.
You also end up with a lot of power centralised in political parties, which are the actual problem of our system. The power of a political party to make or break a politician's career, their livelihood, is why we have terrible politics. So giving them more power is the dumbest thing you can do. But I would say that Reform did actually talk about electoral reform and proportional representation when they weren't getting any votes. So yet again, like the Labour Party, when they get the numbers behind them, that argument goes right out the window.
Right, in a way, that's just politics.
It is just politics. But unfortunately, I think the call for PR is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. What I always say, saying you want PR is like saying you want food for dinner. Doesn't mean anything. What type of food? How much food?
Right.
Like, what time do you want it? It's a meaningless sentence without any kind of context.
Yeah. Well, there is a proportional representation model in Australia, which I actually think works better than the UK does. The obvious answer is that both the Conservatives and Labor are hoping for a reform implosion, and they're just waiting for that to happen, which it may. It may. There is no doubt that is a possibility. In terms of the Conservative strategy, if we go back to what Peter said before, that you're right, Peter, they are looking at, we are going to be the fiscally responsible ones. And you know what? That is a position I have a great deal of sympathy for. But unfortunately, my concern is I don't think you can sell fiscal responsibility in the Western world in 2025. There are too many people who are just happy to keep putting money onto the country credit card. That is the challenge that Kemi Badenoch and the Conservatives will have.
Chaps, we're going to have to go now because I've massively overrun, as I always do. Little Lord late Alex. Thank you to Peter. And right, okay,
Thanks,
coming up after the break, we're going to be talking about the royal family because it was Prince William's 43rd birthday yesterday. Don't go anywhere. Back after this.
After a couple of Chardonnays, he's even more robust.
Is he?
Yeah, he is. But there's a story there, but I won't tell that one on air. But I'll tell you right now, they took this seriously, and what they weren't scared of was a kind of left-wing Guardian-esque narrative building up about them. They stopped caring about that. Our British establishment is terrified of looking like the bad guy, and that's the real difference between Australia and here, and how they've actually approached it. Is when they want to take it as a kind of crime and law and order issue, Australia actually did. And that's the point. Is they say we're now going to enforce the laws.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello Hello there, welcome back to the show. Now, this is our moment to catch up with everything going on with that crowd and all the palaces dotted around the United Kingdom with the help of Charlotte Griffiths, world commentator and editor-at-large of The Mail on Sunday. Prince William was 43 years old yesterday. Happy birthday to our future king. To mark it, the palace does what the palace loves doing, which is releasing a brand new photograph. It was a nice picture of him with his 4 new pet dogs, apparently. But happy birthday, Prince William. What did he do to celebrate, do we know?
Well, he spent a really busy week at Ascot. He also did, the week leading up to his birthday, he did the Royal Garter celebration, Trooping the Colour. So he's been quite front and centre of the royal family. On his actual birthday, I heard that he was just in Norfolk laying low, because that's what he loves to do, and also being with the puppies. He's got these really sweet 4 new puppies. And as you say, the palace do love to release a picture for royals for their birthday. But what I found really unusual this year was quite how informal it was of William. He's lying in a field or sitting in a field with his arms on his knees, looking quite pensive, quite handsome, very distinguished. And it's this new side of the modern royal family where you get these kind of informal pictures. And then there's another one released by Catherine of him being sort of bounded all over by these sweet little puppies. So yeah, this is the new future of the modern, relaxed, informal royal family, shall we say.
Yeah, it's interesting. You talk about the future. I wonder how close that future is, because they've certainly given the Prince of Wales a bit of a glow-up. You reference that rather elegant Regency-style beard, which I think makes him look quite monarchical, actually. There he was as well on mounted steed for trooping of the colour in all of his military regalia. And increasingly, he seems to be doing more and more at a higher tier. He is, of course, the king-in-waiting. We know that the king has what I assume to be terminal cancer. And I think that they're sort of really building up the brand of William at the moment. Do you think he's ready to assume? I mean, he's just turned 43. Compared to his late grandmother, that's quite old to potentially assume the throne of the United Kingdom. But in this day and age, in the sort of 21st century, I'm 41 going on 14. So I wouldn't know how to be Queen of England, although, you know, God forbid that ever lands on my lap. How prepared do you think he is? How willing do you think he is? Because we all got the impression that King Charles was sort of waiting in the wings, quite looking forward to having his turn. And I wonder whether William shares the same enthusiasm.
It's such a good question, the willing versus ready, I think, because, yeah, as you say, Charles was snapping at his mother's heels, and you do get the impression that William could do with it kind of coming in another 10 years or something. And he's always been like this ever since he was a teenager. And in his 20s, you know, we used to call him the reluctant royal. And I thought it was so interesting, that picture for his birthday, how pensive he looked. He does look like he's got the weight of the world on his shoulders at the moment. I always get that sense he is slightly dreading it. I mean, hopefully it is a long way off. I actually don't think it's imminent that he's going to be the King of England, just to kind of be a bit more reassuring about that cancer diagnosis. And of course, we've never been told what you know, the prognosis is for Charles, so we don't know, but he presumably probably does. I think he's going to do it because he's a dutiful person, but he would probably rather wait another few years. He'd probably rather his youngest child was an adult, or, you know, a late teenager before he becomes king.
I mean, I get the impression that one of the decisive things that William might do as king, which his father has understandably been reluctant to do, is tell that pair in Montecito where to get off. Stop using the titles Dutch, you know, Duke and Duchess, and stop sort of, you know, selling $15 flour sprinkles and crepe mix and shortbread cookie mix with flour sprinkles and herbal teas. And next thing, she's going to be whipping out a Gwyneth Paltrow-esque wax candle that nobody should want to buy. But apparently her As Ever brand is selling out, and it's been producing its very first alcoholic offering in the very predictable format of a bottle of rosé. I mean, you just can't get more sort of twee and, you know, sort of like, woke women than a bottle of blimmin' rosé. Make it a pint of cider any day, I say. But, you know, what's she up to here? Because I get the impression that this As Ever, it started off as Orange Blossom Orchard River, California, whatever it was called, which had to be changed. Now it's called As Ever. I get the impression all of this is a bit of a flop, but there she is saying it's been selling out so quickly and there's all these delightful things on offer, etc.
Well, she's claiming she made 10 times more stock this time than last time, and that sold out within 4 hours. Last time, I think it all sold out within 45 minutes. There's been a lot of speculation online that she's kind of artificially creating this demand by not really releasing that much of anything.
Right, she's making like 2 pots of jam in the kitchen and moving potpourri from a pre-made package into one she ties with a ribbon. Because we all learn how to do that watching her show. Move something from one packet to another packet and tie it up with a ribbon. Genius.
Well, this rosé is a bit of a step up from moving pretzels around little plastic bags all over the kitchen counter. I think with the rosé, what she's doing is just trying to make a lot of money because the markup on alcohol is huge. I mean, even in restaurants, you know, if you buy a bottle of wine for 50 quid, they probably bought it for 5 quid. So that's what she's doing. She's just cold hard trying to get some cash in the door. I actually think William, when he becomes king, will be relieved if she just sticks to trying to be the next Martha Stewart, because at least she's not, you know, using her voice to slag off the royal family the whole time. So I think he's happy keeping her in her place. I think you're so right earlier when you picked up on that point about when he does become king, he might give them the boot. I think, honestly, there will be no prisoners. He will take no mercy. He will be ruthless. He'll strip them of their titles, strip them of any claim to any land or property. He will keep them firmly in the States, making flowers to sprinkles. But the other thing that Meghan said recently is that she wants to move into the hospitality space. So I do think maybe the rosé wine is the first step towards, I don't know, opening a hotel or bars or events or something like that has a bit, for her it's about the big profit margin.
Oh, God, what a vile thought.
Charlotte, it's Will here. She's also been doing more of these, you know, podcasts where she's gaslighting people into thinking that she's some sort of entrepreneurial genius. Why do you think she's continuing to do this, you know, really cringe podcast circuit?
Well, she has to. Podcast circuits are the way to promote your new brands. And so she's been doing really slowly and gently in this build-up, very long build-up to releasing her As Ever products. She's been trying to tell the world that she's this fabulous entrepreneur and she knows exactly what she's doing. But, you know, actually, I think it would be more authentic if she said, listen, guys, I want to make some money not slagging off the royal family. I quite like making breakfast for my kids, so I'm going to make these products. I'm giving it a go. Come with me, join the brand. I mean, that's actually what Gwyneth Paltrow did. She was quite honest and authentic, saying, look, I'm an actress.
Well, Charlotte, don't you give that Meghan ideas. We don't want those candles. We know what that candle's made from. We don't want it, okay? Charlotte, don't encourage her. Charlotte, thank you ever so much. That's 1 minute to 8 and we're talking about candles made from Lord knows what. Ugh. Anyway, we're going to take a short break now and contain ourselves, and then we're going to be joined by Ryan Sabey, Deputy Political Editor of The Sun, to talk us through the big stories.
I can announce this government will begin the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War. Yeah. We will deliver our commitment to spend 2.5% of GDP on defence, but we will bring it forward so we reach that level in 2027.
The answer from European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
On Saturday, we also agreed a new £2.2 billion loan for Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sends his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to you?
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
I will do.
I've got to tell him what your reaction is, so I need to know.
He is a great gentleman. A great, great gentleman. He said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time, and he better not be right. Well, I just think he should be more appreciative, because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us, because as you know, that's right there, that's the border.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are not
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back to the show on this historic morning, because we've woken up today to potentially find the world a much safer place. That's correct, because Trump has launched strikes on Iran, targeting 3 nuclear bases which have been blitzed in a historic attack that the Donald has hailed as very successful indeed. Have they managed to completely disavow Iran of its future nuclear capabilities? Well, Donald Trump seems to think so, and what appears to be a very well coordinated and possibly long time in the planning strategy. Operation Rising Lion was begun by Israel a number of days ago as they started launching direct attacks on Iranian facilities, but they needed America's £30,000 bunker buster bombs in order to penetrate the subterranean nuclear layers of the theocratic regime of Tehran. And, well, Trump decided to lend 6 B-1 bombers to the cause, each with a payload of 2 bunker buster bombs. 6 have been reportedly dropped, means that he's got 6 more up his sleeve should he need to use them. Tehran is, of course, responding by throwing a load of missiles over into Israel. 30% of those, we understand, have managed to hit, but we haven't got any reports of casualties as yet. May it stay that way. But we've woken up potentially to an Iran that will now no longer, we hope, be able to develop a nuclear warhead that, well, they're the last people you'd want to have that in their midst. And Sir Keir Starmer has finally reacted, because that's all he does. Mr. Great Strategist, old Lego head himself, has said that Iran should return to the negotiating table. Really? Following US strikes on nuclear sites last night. OK, yeah. So when we went to the negotiating table in Geneva, that worked out well, didn't it? You got frozen out of the strategy because no one trusts you, son. Everyone thinks that you're not an upholder of Western values and you don't have the spine to be part of making history. Let's speak now to Colonel Simon Diggins, military and defence analyst. Simon, great to have you on the programme. Now, I don't know about you, but I woke up this morning, read that news, and I gave a little fist pump. In fact, it wasn't a fist pump. It was more jumped out of bed with a whoop and a sort of, you know, arms to the air in glory of the Donald for finally disarming, or we hope disarming, the bad Ayatollah of potential nuclear weapons. Should I be a bit more cautious in my optimism?
Alex, good morning to you. A lot of detail there, what you're first thing in the morning, but that's fine. Broadly speaking, I think the end of Iran's nuclear ambitions is got to be a good thing. I do not trust the Iranians. They have lied consistently about the level of enrichment that they have been running on their nuclear program. They had an opportunity to negotiate. They didn't negotiate in good faith, and I think Donald Trump had enough of them.
Can Iran actually retaliate in any meaningful way here? Because I get the impression that when you look about what has happened, not just over the course of the last week or 2 weeks or even months, but a longer period of time now, and I almost feel like at the moment Top Gun 2 is almost prophetic in its sort of, you know, portrayal of using F-22s to get at some sort of subterranean mountainous nuclear base, although it wasn't the F-22s doing that particular element of the strikes. But the fact that Hezbollah have been massively diminished following the cell phone stroke walkie-talkie discriminate attacks on the particular proxy, given that Israel is still engaging Hamas and a bit by bit beginning to dismantle that operation as well. And given that they've taken out most of the military commanders, the heads of the Quds Force, the heads of the IRGC, I get the impression now that Iran is going to have to be fighting with both hands tied behind its back.
No, I think Iran's position, particularly its strategic position, is significantly weakened. I mean, its whole strategy was use proxy forces in direct proximity to Israel, and then continue then to build up its nuclear weapons to the point whereby it could then dominate the Middle East, could then make them untouchable. All those elements of strategy have been removed. The proxy forces have been very largely written down, and now their nuclear strategy is being written down as well. They will retaliate. I mean, well, they retaliate directly against US bases, and there are a number of US bases in the region well within Iranian missile range, and so some attack on them would be not unlikely. But of course, that will also then trigger a significant additional response then by the United States, as I say, they've been directly attacked. So I think they'll be cautious about what they do. The reality, though, is their options are now extremely limited, and I, for one, I'm extremely glad about that.
Do you think that Sir Keir Starmer has taken the right avenue in all of this? Because I rather get the impression that America and Israel probably willfully locked Europe out of this. I think Trump's position, and many people in the American military perhaps for a long time, has been that actually Europe's been way too soft on Iran. We've continued to sell them bits. We've turned a blind eye where they essentially disregarded all the terms of the JCPOA. And do you think that therefore Sir Keir Starmer's position of more diplomacy in order for de-escalation, more jaw rather than war is the right one, because he might be more fearful of a fifth column in the United Kingdom? Or should he have come out of his box and said, we support America?
The latter. They should simply have said, you can't do what they've done, which is basically say that we also wish to have the same objective of Iran having no nuclear weapons. We've tried diplomacy. Diplomacy has failed. And then not to come out and actually support people who were removing Iran's ability to have nuclear weapons. We put ourselves basically into the irrelevant bracket. And that's not a great place for us to be. We could have offered support. We could have offered defensive support to Israel. We could have openly said to the Americans, you can use our bases. Let's be honest, one day after the Israelis opened their attack, Iran threatened us. And we did nothing, except we're going to have another diplomatic round. I think that finished last week with the G7, which rapidly turned into the G6. And Donald Trump walked out basically because the rest of them had nothing to say. And we continue to have nothing to say all week, still saying nothing. And now there are complaints talking about, well, this wasn't legitimate or whatever. I mean, the legitimacy and legality are two different things. I think it was absolutely legitimate self-defence. Whether it necessarily fits within the constraints of the current law on that, I think needs to be looked at very, very hard. I, for one, salute what they've done there. I'm very critical about Israel, about a lot of what they've been doing in places like the Gaza and indeed the West Bank. Well, on this issue, they're absolutely correct and completely aligned with the West's major requirements, which is Iran shall not have a nuclear bomb. These are the people who 136 British soldiers in Iraq terrorised the Middle East and are terrorising their own people. In 2022, they suppressed women of Iran. In 2020, they shot down a civilian airliner. That's who we're dealing with. The only thing I understand is force, and that's what they've now had to deal with.
Yeah, I agree entirely. I think it is a very positive day. I think that Donald probably deserves a Nobel Peace Prize, but they seem to only give Nobel Peace Prizes to people who then end up being leaders of rather dodgy countries, it seems to be. Thank you ever so much, Colonel Simon Diggins, and saying that, UK could end up being an irrelevance doesn't go as far as what Colonel Richard Kemp said, which is, America might see fit to boot us out of Five Eyes. But again, things that Simon was saying there echoed what I said earlier, which is about this sort of messing around, talking about the legal legitimacy of all of this. I'm sorry, when does that Attorney General, Lord Hermer, who seems to always be on the side of the wrong-uns, when did he run this country and our foreign policy? Who is he? I mean, how dare he turn around and say, oh, it's not legally legitimate. Get back in your box, sunshine. We don't want to hear from the likes of you. Pretty alarming, actually, hearing those, unified reviews of people from a military background all sort of raising an eyebrow as to the limp-wristedness of Sir Keir Starmer in all of this. Let's now talk to Ryan Saby, Deputy Political Editor of The Sun, and let's talk about the political implications of Sir Keir Starmer's approach. He has turned around and said Iran should return to the negotiating table table following US strikes on nuclear sites last night. But the problem here is, Ryan, it seemed to me Sir Keir Starmer rather fancied himself as the great diplomat, the interlocutor, the geopolitical expert, getting on planes and turning up at G7, this visit, that visit, trying to sort of broker a relationship between Zelensky and Starmer. But when it comes to possibly the most historic day, the most decisive Western action that is going to potentially protect the world, where was he? He was frozen out.
I think this seems to be a unilateral decision by the US. They've taken this, obviously, in top secrecy. I wonder whether, and we don't know this at the moment, whether Sir Keir Starmer was informed in advance. He may have had slight notice of these attacks, but it was America who've taken this action overnight. And we've had words from Sir Keir saying that Iran can't be there to develop nuclear weapons, and the US has acted to alleviate that threat. Now, one thing he also says in the statement he's released in the last sort of half an hour or so is to get back round the negotiating table. And he's spoken about this continuously over the past week or so. I was out with him at the G7 in Canada, and what he spoke about was diplomacy and dialogue. He really didn't want to get to this stage. It has. He now thinks that what America have done is try to, as I say, alleviate that threat. But it's time to get talking again.
I mean, there are suggestions from people in the military I've spoken to this morning on the programme that the UK was invited to aid America in this particular operation and turned around and said no, probably because that Lord Hermer decided he didn't want the country to. But why is this? Why is Sir Keir Starmer so fearful of actually taking a decision if he thinks of himself as the great diplomat? Why is he so fearful of taking a decision that historically I think is going to be proven to be exactly right one to do? Does it all boil down to his innate fear of community tensions in this country?
Well, I don't actually think that's probably the case. I think let's have a look at the operational decisions that were made by America. Could America actually take this military action by themselves? Did they need to use Diego Garcia, or could they use one of their military bases in the Pacific? So I think we probably need to look at what America was capable of by themselves. They've got those B-2 bombers, those incredible planes that can fly for, they can go for 12 hours, 24 hours. They refuel during the air. So did we actually need UK involvement? Now, again, when I was with Keir Starmer last week at the G7, he didn't pick up anything at that point that the US were going to attack. It just shows you how quickly things happen. But I think it's just very clear. I don't think this is a situation where Britain, in terms of the Iraq War, where there was obviously that close relationship and you had that close bond between George Bush and Tony Blair. In this circumstance, it seems like military action could have been taken by America by itself, and it was. Did they need any allies to drop those bombs on those nuclear targets, those 6 sort of precision attacks? That there may have been some help that was needed, possibly from the UK if they wanted to, and if they were asked to be called upon. But at the moment, from listening to sort of people in and around the debate this morning, it seems like the UK wasn't involved in this at all, and perhaps the UK just wasn't needed in this particular circumstance. So let's just see what comes out in the coming hours. But what Keir was very clear to talk about in recent days was diplomacy and dialogue, and it seems that Donald Trump, he left that G7 meeting early. He seems to be planning these attacks. And they've happened overnight.
Yeah, I think they've probably been a long time in the planning. Let's talk now about somewhere where he's actually for the first time been able to be decisive, it seems, when asked about whether the really vile group Kneecap, who have openly supported Hamas. In fact, one of the band members was charged with a terror offence, having displayed a flag in support of terror group Hezbollah. When asked whether this disgusting group Kneecap should be banned from Glastonbury or should they play at Glastonbury, he's actually managed to turn around and say, no, I don't. I think we need to come down really clearly on this. I won't say too much because there's a court case on, but I don't think that that's appropriate, at least finally on something where it comes to sort of this grey area with how much he's willing to sort of stand up and speak out in favour of Western values. He might have got something right.
Yeah, so Keir, very, very, very clear answer on that. I mean, a lot of controversy over whether Kneecap should be playing Glastonbury, but they've also been playing, I think, lots of other concerts. They played a sort of smaller concert in London at the 100 Club a few weeks ago. But I think it also sort of triggers the question over whether Kneecap brought that performance at Glastonbury, which is next weekend, should actually be broadcast on the BBC. So the BBC have got sort of questions to ask themselves, especially when they've got those charges hanging over the band. But again, we saw those scenes of the member of Kneecap when he turned up at court the other week. There seemed to be hundreds and hundreds of people outside in support. But Sir Keir Starmer and Kemi Badenoch, they don't agree on too much too often, but they are on agreement on this, and they shouldn't, and that they have, of the view that Kneecap shouldn't be appearing at Glastonbury, full stop.
Oh, Glastonbury, I wouldn't want to go there if someone paid me, frankly. Now, let's talk about John Healey, because the Defence Secretary has turned out and said that NATO must step up and increase its military might amid a plan to spend 5% of GDP on defence. I mean, that's all good and well, given that we do live in uncertain times, and without doubt there are very few people out there who would disagree with that particular target. But the problem is we're not going to get close to that anytime soon, are we?
No, this week, Tuesday, Wednesday, NATO leaders and leaders of those who are members of NATO will be travelling to NATO for a big debate around how much spending that they should contribute. One thing that the NATO chief Mark Rutte says that every country should be paying 5%. Now that is a big jump from the 2.5, 2.7% that we are paying. I just want to point out that Sir John Healey was asked about 3% the other week, and I think he used the term as ambition that they'd like to get to, no firm commitment. So to go from 2.5% to 3% and then on again to 5%, I think John Healey and other members of will have to go and see the Chancellor Rachel Reeves about that, because that is a massive gap to bridge. And I don't think it's going to be happening soon. It was hard enough to get a few extra pounds out of the Treasury at the spending review, and that is a big jump to that. But there is going to be a lot of pressure. We've had Donald Trump talking about whether he should actually put all this money up for US defence if European countries aren't going to. His opinion is, why should the US be that guarantor of European security when lots of European countries maybe pulling in about 2% of their GDP into defence funding? So John Healey in that piece in the Sun on Sunday talks about that step up to increasing military funding. No commitment to what that sort of big increase is, but around the cabinet table, he will be pushing for more cash.
Ryan, thank you ever so much. It's interesting. I always get the impression that now America looks at the Europeans like problematic relatives. It's not just they're not stumbling up the cash for NATO. They just make their own calls on things. They want to sit down and hold hands with, the tyrannical regime in Iran. They've been continuously selling stuff to Iran. When it comes to the crunch of, are we going to protect the West or not, Europe is found wanting. And I just wonder at that NATO meeting quite what President Erdogan of Turkey is going to say, who I'm sure is going to be very vocal about US and Israel strike on Iran.
To be honest, I actually think the US looks on the Europe with a bit of pity now. They look economically, you're a busted flush. Free speech you've given up on. Your cities are fraying at the seams with mass migration. I think a lot of Americans actually look more with sadness than with any real... It's an apathy now more than anything else, which is, if anything, more depressing.
I know, it's sad, isn't it? Right, OK, we're going to be taking a short break now, but when I come back after the break, it's going to be time for Head to Head. So strap yourselves in. Political pugilism is on its way. That's after this.
There's a bill going through Parliament which will give counter-terrorism powers to our law enforcement, ability to get in much earlier. I know we've got to do more. That's why I'm working with our partners to do that, particularly in relation to law enforcement in the north of France. And then importantly, where people do come to the country who aren't entitled to be here, processing their claims and then returning them to where they came from. And since we've been in power, 30,000 people who've no right to be in the United Kingdom have now been removed from the United Kingdom.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, hello there. Welcome back to the show. Alex Phillips with you until 10 o'clock this morning. Can you believe we've done 2 hours and 22 minutes together already? If you've been there from the beginning, well done. Pour yourself that gin in your tea, as I suggested you do earlier, because the sun has got its hat on today, hasn't it? Hip, 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 hooray. America has bombed Tehran and no longer can they play with making nuclear weapons. I'm very delighted about it. Anyway, it is time for our big political head-to-head. And we have on the right Maxwell Harrison, Reform UK, Kent County Councillor.
Morning. Morning.
Congratulations
Thank
from
you
the local
very
election.
much.
I know it's the first time I've met you.
No,
so,
I know.
Rather tardy indeed. All going well with doging the heck out of what's been going on in Kent?
Absolutely loving it. I mean, they are terrified and good. I mean, the Tories, the Labour Party, they are absolutely worried every single day because they know that we are going to expose every single thing that's going on in that place. And loving it.
Well, we're the popcorn at the ready. And
yes.
He's too good to be true. And he can't take his eyes off you. It is Andy Williams, political commentator, representing the left on the battlefront today. Let's start off, first of all, with this rather strident polling that's come out from Ipsos, putting Reform on 34%, 9 points ahead of Labour on 25%. The Conservatives down on 15%, and that might sound pretty eye-opening, but it gets even more dramatic when you look at the seat projections based upon that particular vote share. Reform could win in excess of 400 seats, giving the party a majority of almost 200. The Tories could get fewer than 10 seats, and Labour would be on 140. It seems like going from, two legacy parties to a one-party state. I mean, this must please you a lot, Maxwell.
Oh, absolutely. And mark my words, this is just the very beginning. Reform UK is going to win the next general election. No, it is. And you can laugh all you like, day in, day out, ordinary people. If you stood for election, you understand what it's like out there, the apathy, the anger towards the main two parties. People have, quite frankly, had enough of the Tories and Labour Party. This is a political extinction event for the Tories. And mark my words, we're going to win. We're going to get Nigel into number 10, and we are going to save this country.
Aha! Said Andy Williams.
Well, it's just not going to happen. I mean, but it's not. I mean, it's really not.
Starmer's so popular. Starmer's so popular.
It's nothing to do with Starmer's being... nobody's... Well, firstly, actually, if you look at the head-to-head on Starmer versus Farage, best Prime Minister, Starmer is more popular than Nigel Farage. So, I mean, Reform...
He's also the most disliked Prime Minister in history.
That's actually not...
60 to 70% now disapproval rating.
Sorry, that is not true, actually. That's just not... It's not.
No, it is.
No, it's not.
It is.
It's not.
Go out,
if only I had a man jumping around with a thermometer right now.
In the break, I'll pull up the actual truth, which is that Liz Truss was the most unpopular Prime Minister in history. In fact, Keir Starmer is not remotely close to being the most unpopular Prime Minister in history. I'm not claiming he's popular. He's not. But you guys in Reform are living in this massive bubble where everybody thinks it in exactly the same way as you. And I know because I spend quite a lot of time in this building. And the reality is that Reform are doing very well in the polls, there's no doubt about it, and I think the threat of Reform, and I think it is a threat, we should take absolutely seriously. And I think there is a chance that they will do very well at the next general election. But the idea that they're going to win 400 seats or anything close is laughable. Let's be absolutely serious about this. Reform doesn't have a serious programme for government. It has an economic policy platform that is utterly absurd. I'd like you to explain to me how we're going to increase the personal allowance to £20,000 for everybody, how we're going to cut inheritance tax for everybody, how we're going to nationalise all of these industries. Nobody has explained how this is going to be paid for. Nigel Farage is a deeply divisive figure. Some people love him, but a lot of people hate him. He was the man behind Brexit, which anybody objectively can look at as a disaster so far. And you've got 5 MPs, 20% of them have been in jail for domestic violence. The others are not serious. It's a joke.
They're so unserious. That's the 16th safest seat for Labour. Sarah Potion won. This idea that you're saying that
governments lose by-elections all the time.
It's not a by-election or like it's not normal procedure. That was an absolute Marcus Starmer didn't even go because he's terrified. He's a coward. He's a moral coward. He is not at all popular. You know, you're saying that Labour, the Tories have a chance of winning. Absolutely bonkers. Starmer has zero chance.
Zero chance.
Keir Starmer has zero chance. He won't last. He's not going to last till the general election.
Yes, he will.
No, he won't. They'll get rid of him. We've got the Welsh elections next year. Reform is going to get 30 to 35.
The Welsh elections are irrelevant.
It's not irrelevant. You
Sorry
can't
to
just
listeners in Wales, you are relevant
they're all
to
irrelevant.
us. We love you.
How people feel is totally irrelevant, according to Andy. I mean, it's a joke. Our pathway to power, we've got Scotland and Wales next year. We're going to do very well, even if you look at some of our London data. I mean, first of all, we've got
Who's going to be your First Minister, then?
I don't know. You can ask Nigel. You can ask Nigel. I mean, I don't have a personal preference.
How's Kent County Council Doge going?
Brilliant, fantastic. It's fantastic, thank you very much.
What's the budget of Kent County Council?
It's £2.5 billion.
But anyway, I asked the questions in this room.
Yeah.
Just say.
It was fine,
We got parameters. I do like a bit of freestyling there. But let's talk about we're talking about whether Reform could win the next election. I suppose it comes down to what's on people's minds in 4 years' time. And yes, I would argue as well that no political party has a fully meted policy programme yet, because we are 4 years away from a general election and a lot can change in that time. A week in politics is a very long time indeed. But certainly if we take a snapshot of where we're at right now in July of 2025, which is a long way off May 2029, a poll is showing that 1 in 5 Britons who backed Sir Keir Starmer in 2024 would now consider casting a ballot for reform. And Labour voters believe immigration is the biggest burden on the NHS. Andy, it seems to me that immigration, unless something can dramatically happen, is not going to be an issue that disappears. There are things that the Labour Party will be able to do, pulling levers to change the numbers of legal migration. Yep. Do you think they're going to be able to get the numbers down to the sort of sustainable level that the majority of British people want, which is not 400,000 a year, but quite a long way below that, I would argue?
Yes, you're absolutely right that, of course, immigration is still going to be a major issue at the next election. I think it will probably be the second biggest issue, because I really believe that the number one issue is how do people feel financially, the money in their pockets, whether they're actually they're better off than they were at the last election. And we know that for a long time that hasn't been the case. But in terms of immigration, the numbers are coming down. I think if you look at the way in which the numbers have come down, a lot of the credit has to go to Rishi Sunak for that, who did start putting in place some of the policies. If you look at targeting, for example, Albanian migrants. Well, yeah, but this is the reality. People voted for Brexit, and many of the people who voted for Brexit did so because they wanted to see...
Absolutely.
Well, that's your view. Many of patriots, I'm sure. Sensible, I'm not so sure. But many people voted because they wanted to see those numbers come down.
Yes.
And ironically, the moment the Brexit deal was done, now, and I'm not saying this is a fault of Brexit or because of Brexiteers, but the fact is the Brexit deal was done by Boris Johnson and immigration went up to nearly, I think it was 900,000 net. Now, that is coming down. I think it will continue to come down a lot more. We spend far too much time, and it is important that illegal migration is a tiny percentage of the total number of people coming into the country.
But the optics are shocking on that front, aren't they?
And I understand why people are concerned about it, because
who are these people breaking into our country?
Look, and
we don't know who they are. We don't know their criminal records.
Fairness is important, and it's not fair that people should be able to jump the queues. So all of that's true. But I think Labour will get the numbers down. If it doesn't, then of course that is a massive opening for reform.
Now we're going to pause it there because we're going to roll into our advertisement break after I do this little competition read, because it is competition time here at Talk. We're giving you the chance to win tickets. That's right, a pair of them too, to go and see Oasis play live in Manchester on July the 19th. We'll also put you up in a hotel and give you £5 to splash. Here's everything you need to know.
Alright, kid. You have to be over 18 to enter in the UK, excluding Northern Ireland. for the chance to win a pair of tickets to the most electrifying rock and roll reunion of the century, a hotel stay and £5 spending money, all you got to do is text the word Oasis to 83338 by Monday the 7th of July at 11 p.m. and you'll be entered into the draw to go supersonic this summer. Sorted. Right, here's all the legal stuff. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You've got to have the bill payer's permission or post your name and number to Oasis Prize Draw, P.O. Box 3190, Colchester, CO2 8GP, to arrive by 5 p.m. on the 10th of July. This is a TalkSport limited promotion run on TalkSport, Talk and Virgin Radio UK stations. Full T's and C's at talksport.com.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, hello there. Welcome back. The left, the right. Let's unite. Shake your hands. Squeeze each other tight and then go after one another, please, because that's what we want on a Sunday morning. We don't want too much peace and joy. Let's talk about this one now. This is one that I've just pulled out from my pile. University staff could walk out over calls to return to the office 3 days a week. I mean, blimey, they've got it hard, haven't they? The union, Unite, is basically accusing the University of Liverpool of riding roughshod over the well-being and personal lives of staff members. Current rules dictate employees in admin roles must come into work 2 days a week, but bosses are demanding they attend in person for 3 days. Well, just go to work for 3 days, surely, Andy. Is it that hard?
No, it's not. I mean, my team, in my real job, we are in the office 4 days a week. And that's because we have clients. We are client-facing business, and we need to be servicing those clients and going out there and meeting people and pounding the pavements and having coffees with people, and that requires people not to be at home. So on Fridays, people can work from home and have a bit of a break from the commute, but otherwise you're in.
A break from the commute, or just a bit of a break?
Well, no. So here's the thing: like, it's not the case that that when people work from home, they're doing nothing. That is absolutely not the case.
Well, no, they're doing their laundry, they're making themselves a nice lunch, they're watching telly.
Hang on, but when people are watching telly,
in your eye, you're like, oh,
no, because it's perfect. It's perfectly fine to do all those things in the same way as when people are in the office. You go to the coffee machine and you go to the water cooler and you have chats with people. And we all know that just because you're in the office, it doesn't automatically make you productive. Having said that, 3 days a week is no. It's not exactly.
Do you know what the lovely
difficult,
acronym is for people who work 3 days a week?
Yes, I do.
Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. You can spell it for yourself. Anyway, I mean, look, talking about people who don't come into the workplace, and you're at the moment doging your own council, how many of your lot are sitting there under slankets looking after council tax money?
Far, far too many. I mean, we've got 9,000 staff at Kent County Council. There are times when you're in there where it's like a ghost town. And you wonder why, for so long, particularly under the 28 years of the Tory administration there, why the effectiveness and efficiency of this council was really poor. That actually the services weren't being delivered, why people up and down the county weren't actually getting their value for money. So, we absolutely intend on stopping as much as we can with this working from home nonsense. It's very clear that working at the workplace is the best type of place, it's the highest productivity, and also it's about service, like particularly at Kent County Council. You should rock up in a suit, looking formal every single day, because you are there as a duty to look after residents. And this idea of working from home and putting your feet up and being in your pyjamas with your cup of tea, it's utter woke nonsense.
I used to work from home back in the day, before it was trendy, actually. Can I just say, I worked from home back in 2012. Long time before that pandemic, and I tell you what, yes, you might have moments where you are more productive because you're not part of... But actually, here's another confession, right? There are people who turn up to present their shows like 3 hours beforehand and rattle around talk towers and, you know, maybe sit there studiously going through all the papers. I kind of do it the other way around. I tend to come in about 40 minutes before the show because I lie in bed in the mornings going through the newspapers in my pyjamas, and I find it's far less distracting doing that than coming into the office and having people, you know, jabber at me about things that I'm going to find really entertaining. But at the same time, when I actually worked from home proper back in 2012, the temptation to just play a bit fast and loose for timekeeping is for real, and I think there has to have a lot of trust in your staff in order to make sure. And then, you know, potentially it's sort of inviting this sort of mouse movement trackers and spying. I don't know. Just get it's good for humanity and socialising to mix.
I think businesses and organisations just need to be sensible about it and do whatever gets the best out of their people. But I tend to err on the side of actually it's good for people to be in the office and be together.
Good for mental health.
Well, and collaboration, you're a team.
And football on the high street, in the economy, and everything. Right, let's move on now, because here's a story that I really want to talk about, which is there is a school in London's East End where none, zero, nil, zilch of the pupils speak English as a first language. Maybe should have said, I don't know how to say none in more than one language, really. Zero in French, that's all I know. Anyway, it is called Kobe Nazrul Primary School. That's an interesting name, isn't it? Who's Kobe Nazrul when he's at home? That's what I want to know. Says that it's thought to be the only school in the country with no pupil who speak English as the first language, and yet apparently it gets rave reviews. This school is in Tower Hamlets, and apparently the fact that they're not bound by a common language doesn't seem to be too much of a problem. And yet, if I'm going to be honest about this terrifies me. I don't like it. I don't like the fact that in this country there are schools where nobody speaks English, because I worry about changing demographics and I worry about what will bind us together during the course of future generations. If we're not in a position where everyone's, you know, singing from the same hymn sheet, I think it will lead to social division. Does that make me a racist, Andy?
No, it doesn't make you a racist, and I think it's important that everybody can speak a level of English that's sufficient for them to interact with the state, to go about their daily lives, to speak to people in shops, all of those sorts of things. We can't force people to have English as their first language. Your first language is your first language. And I think you speak in your private home is nobody else's business. But you do need to be speaking English at school. And I assume that all of these lessons are taught in English.
One would assume, otherwise it's only going to take 10 minutes to explain that, you know.
Exactly,
just say good morning to the class,
several languages.
School register.
So I don't think we should be criticising the school, but and you know, so how can I put it? I don't think we should be berating people for having something other than English as their first language in Britain.
But should we be concerned? Is this not an indication of quite how sweeping and rapid demographic change is set to be, particularly in our capital city, and what that might mean for the future?
Oh, it's absolutely terrifying. You know, this is a resultant of mass, uncontrolled migration that's come into the United Kingdom, wherein integration has been at the forefront of any government's agenda, and now we've got a real systemic problem here, and I think it's only going to get worse. It is really important that actually we do have British values, that one of those key tenets, is that you speak the language of the country.
Is a language a value?
Absolutely, of course it is. It's part of social cohesion. Yes, it is. It's part of social cohesion.
To get along, you have to be able to communicate.
Correct, absolutely. You know, whether it's television or how our services run, this idea that we have to pander to the rest of the world and that we have to have English translated for everything is nonsense.
I tell you what, though, you know, someone who's lived around the world a heck of a lot, as I have done. I lived in Ghana and I learnt quite a bit of Twi, which is the main language, the Akan language of the majority of Ghanaians. And yet, of course, Ghanaians speak English. English is predominantly the national language. I lived in Kenya, same thing. Brazilians are different languages there, but predominantly people speak English. And I also worked for an English language newspaper in India, where, again, English is the national language because lots of different states speak different languages. When I then lived in China, I didn't speak a word of Chinese. Very few people in Shanghai could speak Chinese. And do you know what I ended up doing? I ended up crawling into a tiny little nucleus of other expats and spending all of my time only with them. I'd sit in my office at work and everyone else is speaking Chinese and I felt like I had to, I'd occasionally be able to speak to certain people, but otherwise I just looked at UK news. I spent all my time with UK people. We ended up going and doing UK things together, going to the UK style pubs, and you do end up isolated from the society. And as a result, did I enjoy living in China? No, I did not. And based on that alone, I think it is so important that everybody is able to come together around culture and communication.
But I do think it's important that we use the right language when we're talking about these sorts of things, and I really dislike using the word terrified. Why is it terrified?
I'm terrified.
Oh, of course it's terrifying.
Why are you terrified? You're not terrified, Alex.
I am.
Yeah, Corey.
I'm blimmin'. It keeps me awake at night.
Genuinely scared.
Yes, I am
If you
very,
don't mind
very
me saying,
scared.
that is utterly absurd.
Why? Why would I?
It is ridiculous.
Why is it absurd to be really frightened?
No,
in
it's not.
10,
Why are you
20 years
frightened?
time? Because I am
Why?
frightened that
Nobody's
in 10,
banging down
20
your
years
door.
time, I'm frightened 10, 20 years time,
Get a grip,
the
guys.
Britain of old is gone because there aren't Brits anymore, because we're not coalescing around one language, because everything that has been for the last 2,000 years will be eradicated,
This is
and
why,
that we're going to
can I
be
just say,
left
this
in a
conversation
balkanised,
right here
broken
now
Britain.
is why Reform isn't going to win the next general election, because you guys are so extreme on things like this, and you use language like terrified.
Do you know what?
And you're waking up at
Andy,
a third of people are not lying in bed awake at night worried about this. They're really, really not.
Why
Like,
not?
Wake up, guys.
Andy, I'll invite you, right, on this show, right? I'll invite you to the Isle of Sheppey.
I don't want to come to the Isle of Sheppey.
Well, that's very rude, isn't it? It's part of Kent. I know it's outside your London bubble, but you come down to the Isle of Sheppey. These people are absolutely terrified, rightly so, of mass uncontrolled migration, which is destroying this country, which is ensuring that we can't get our homes. Yes, it is. We can't get a doctor's appointment. We can't get a dentist appointment. Our country is broken because of mass uncontrolled migration. This is a resultant of what's been going on, and your frankness, don't even want to speak to ordinary people about it, shows you everything about your politics.
Let me throw in a bit of a curveball here, because I'm going to segue into this other story, which is slightly related. Going back to, what was it, Kobe Nasrall School. Tekop, who is Kobe Nasrall? Tekop's busy doing something. Tekop is my sort of like secret researcher. Who's Kobe Nasrall? Can you find out for me? I want to know. Anyway, Kobe Nasrall School, most of the youngsters from Indian and Pakistani background, speaking Hindi and Urdu, a number speaking Albanian, Bangladeshi families. It's just yards away from the East London Mosque, which has 7,000 worshippers. I wonder if that particular school, the Kobe Nasrall Primary School, is doing the same as this particular primary school, where parents are raising concerns over leaflets being handed out by Swindon and Wiltshire Pride Factory, encouraging primary school children to be taught about the 300 flags of pride. Now, do you reckon the Bangladeshis and the Pakistanis and the Albanians in Kobe Nasrall School are learning about the 300 flags of pride, Andy?
What do you think?
I'm going to go with probably not, because they probably do not share those values.
I wouldn't have thought so either.
Right, and do you not think that that is indicative of the problem that we've got of balkanisation, of communities, of different cultures, believing in different things and not coalescing around the same objectives? Not that I agree with that, Muck.
I think Pride Month and the Pride flag are important things, and I think it's great that when businesses and organisations and councils show solidarity with LGBT people, I don't think we need 300 flags. I don't really know. I don't really know if anybody could name all 300 or who designed or invented these 300 flags, to be honest.
Yeah, I just think it's a bit weird and gross to be teaching under 12s all about things such as polyamory and intersex inclusivity. They're kids! Right, let's take a short break now, but don't go anywhere, because these two are going to continue with fisticuffs right after I've been paid by these various companies flogging their wares at you.
Well, it is, and I thought Diane Abbott actually made a very powerful intervention today. That's a phrase I've never used.
Oh, hang on, Robert. No, so we booked the wrong guest, guys.
You've got the wrong
Robert's
guest.
gone mad. He's citing wisdom from Diane Abbott.
Not for the first time, gone a bit mad in my case. But she she is against this, and what she said was that she wouldn't want to put, and I quote, her life in the hands of a panel. Yeah. And we can add to that a government-sponsored panel.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, hello, welcome back to the show. And as things are hotting up in the Middle East, let's get things turned up a notch or two in the studios in Talk Towers, because let's focus our attention now to what's happened overnight. And Donald Trump going in, all in, bombing Iran. I think a historic day. I must admit, I jumped out of bed this morning. In fact, not even this morning. I went to bed last night giddy with excitement when I knew that those B-1 bombers had taken off and then gone like off radar. I was like, go on, get in! Because I'm not a warmonger. I'm a peace believer. No, I'm a peace believer. And I think taking out Iran's nuclear capabilities is worthy of the Nobel Peace Prize, because we're not going to have mad theocracies who are part of a death cult wishing ill on most of the West. And in fact, most other Muslims as well should be anywhere near a nuclear weapon. So thank you, and a round of applause to Donald for essentially saving us from World War III. That is my position on all of this. However, our Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, might have a slightly different take, because it seems to me he wasn't really involved in all of this. The jury's out over whether or not he was asked to get involved and said no because Lord Hermer told him to, or whether he was just excluded. Both things I don't think are a particularly good look. But Sir Keir Starmer has opened up his cake hole this morning and said that Iran should return to the negotiating table following US strikes on nuclear sites last night, rather in keeping with his position of diplomacy and de-escalation, Georgia, not war. Andy, now I totally disagree with this. I've had a couple of people on representing the military, Colonel Richard Kemp, Colonel Simon Diggins. Both colonels are also saying they think that this is pretty lily-livered and weak of the UK. In fact, Colonel Richard Kemp was pretty worried that this might put us in such a bad and weak position geopolitically we could be booted out of Five Eyes. I mean, you know, why is Sir Keir Starmer not backing saving the world?
Well, when you say backing saving the world, are we hoping that we sort of go in off the back of America and bomb Iran further? Or, I mean, it just seems like a perfectly sensible response that, and this is not a party political point, by the way, that any UK Prime Minister would take, which is...
Other than Blair, because he would be in there.
Maybe. He did like a bit of war in the Middle East. He did. No, I think it's a perfectly sensible position. I'm sure obviously Trump has taken this stand because he feels like there's no alternative but to go in and try and take out Iran's nuclear capabilities. I think we can all agree that it's a very bad thing if Iran is getting anywhere near achieving nuclear weapon status, and they have 60% rich uranium for a reason. It's not because they're doing it for the fun of it. So, I'm not against the action that the US has taken, but I think it's a perfectly sensible position for Starmer to come in and say, OK, right,
we'll let you get on with it because you've got the capabilities, and we're going to sort of keep our hands clean.
Yes.
I think we're keeping our hands clean because of the fifth column we might have in this country.
No, I don't think that's the case at all. I think it's a perfectly sensible position, and I'm sure that we will be backing America to the hilt. But that doesn't mean we have to go in and get militarily involved. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't. It depends on what happens next. Yeah. But right now, I think that's a perfectly sensible position.
I mean, perhaps that is a valid point of view. I mean, I'd love to get all in there just to be part of it. Because I just hate Iran.
But you're not
the Iranians. I love the Iranians, but I want to see them emancipated from the beardy weirdies and their crazy death cult theocracy. And I do worry, actually, that part of this is because we are worried about repercussions from sleeper cells of the IRA IRGC, the mad pro-Pally lot who marched through the streets, who now have turned from going stop bombing Gaza to stop bombing Iran. Like, dudes, we're not actually bombing Iranian citizens. We're taking out these evil weapons-making lairs. And I worry that it actually is a sign of weakness that, you know, since the Blair days, we have seemed to have backpedaled a little bit and become rather sort of unimportant, let's say, geopolitically.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, Starmer, other than the fact that he already is a national embarrassment, I think on the global stage, he's an international embarrassment as well. You know, there's 2 days ago, where he was saying, Trump's never going to bomb Iran, and now... And by the way, Trump's not bombing Iran. He's bombing, you know, the nuclear sites of this despicable, disgusting, vile regime, which perpetrates the most awful things to its own people. And so I completely agree. You know, it's absolutely disgusting what they're doing. And, you know, I think you're right. I think there's a little bit of a political prowess when he is terrified of actually the repercussions here. The far left mob that have been on our streets, that have been saying anti-Semitic things week in, week out. I think they're terrified. And that's why, you know, the Labour Party, you know, you say it's not a political point. It is, because they have no identity. They don't know where they're going. And I think, you know, it's very clear that, you know, Trump's involvement of not having the UK, I think it's quite telling. They don't trust us. You know, Israel doesn't want to use us anymore.
That is utterly ridiculous.
It's not utterly ridiculous. It's the truth. This country is a joke under the helm of Starmer. And at a time when we have got a serious threat with Iran, which is the most vile regimes out there, it's very, very telling that Trump is not using us as a capable ally.
No, it's not. It's just America behaving exactly as America always behave, which is that they take a view. They're the most powerful military country in the world, and they're doing their thing off their own back.
But
as they would under any prime minister. It's nothing to do with Keir Starmer or David Cameron or Tony Blair or anybody.
Hold on, but is it something to do with, look, the jury's out over whether or not the UK was invited to participate. We'll probably never know that, because that would be, one assumes, a degree of classified information. Is it not the case that what we...
They don't need us to help them, America, do they?
Well, they might need a Diego Garcia Island, to give that to China, basically.
It's very clear, because even if we could help, we can't. You know, our military might is totally dwindled with cuts after cuts after cuts.
Of course.
I mean, Bryce Norton are more concerned about, you know, pride flags for a zebra crossing than they are actually looking after their own base. You know, our army is less than 75,000 now. We are crippled as a military might now. And actually, I understand America's position, going, don't even involve the UK, because actually we're not a serious, credible military threat.
You don't know
we're
that's
not, Andy. If you understand the way our military works, I've got a military background from my family. It is absolutely clear our military might is totally dwindled, and we're unreliable on the world stage.
Are you suggesting that if we'd been invited to participate, we literally wouldn't be able to? Because that's not true, is it?
Oh, we've got less RF jets now than we have.
Would we be able to, if we were invited to participate, would we be able to or would we not be able to?
Nowhere near as much capabilities as we should.
Would we be able to, though? We would, wouldn't we?
Nowhere near as much as we should, Andy.
It's not
we have
true
a moral
that we couldn't, is it? That's a lie.
No, it's not. No, we could not do it as much as we should, and we're as one of the most important countries in the world. We should be able to do it.
Let me ask you this then, because the sort of main headline from Starmer is that whether or not we have the capability to participate in that first round when Iran was chucking missiles at Israel, we did actually send some Eurofighter Typhoons over to help intercept some of those missiles. So we did play a little role there when it came to the defence of an ally. This is, of course, an offensive. This is an aggression rather than a defence in this particular instance. And Sir Keir Starmer said that Iran should return to the negotiating table. Is that not, though, kind of what potentially got us into this mess? Because we tried to negotiate with Iran. We had years of the JCPOA, the so-called nuclear pact, which the EU were very happy to push and promote, all the while Iran didn't keep their end of the bargain, because they got up to 60% levels of enrichment. And we know that you can't trust a terrorist to sit down and play fair. And they hate us. They call us little Satan. So why on earth are we sitting around expecting to do kumbaya with, you know, the mad Ayatollah? I mean, I just think this sounds like more and more appeasement of a toxic regime. Why would the line be return to the negotiating table?
Because the best outcome is that we can get to a position where we're safer in the world without having to go around bombing people.
Were we not less safe because we negotiated with them?
Action like the action that was taken last night, which I don't oppose, by the way, action like that should be a last resort. And so I don't think we should be criticising America or Britain or anyone in the West for trying over the last decade or two to you say appease, I would say negotiate with and come to a position where we can hold back the tide on Iran's nuclear capability. Now America's taken a position that it needs to get involved militarily, and I think that's perfectly fair too. But I think Starmer is taking the position that every other country in the world will take, every other world leader, which is, this has happened, let's now see how it plays out. In the meantime, he's betting on Iran coming back and going,
The leader of Australia, very similar hue of government to ours, has turned around and basically given Trump a big round of applause. I mean, is the problem here actually that, again, according to newspaper reports, Starmer went to his mate Lord Hermer to say, what should I do? And Lord Hermer, who apparently runs the country now, turned around and said, oh, well, it would be breaking international law. And actually, Lord Hermer just keeps getting things wrong. This man has too much power. Yep. And it's kind of alarming that Sir Keir Starmer's extreme leftist barrister mate from back in the day in Chambers seems to be calling the shots on foreign policy.
It's totally wrong, and actually your point again is a little bit erroneous. Starmer's doing what Starmer does best. He's a human rights lawyer who has defended some despicable individual in his country and stopped us deporting people who should not be here. It is total appeasement, it's total weakness to say that, you know, we need to wait for peace and have some sort of deal. You cannot negotiate with terrorists. The safest option is to ensure that Iran has no nuclear capability. We've got someone in Trump now, whether you love him or hate him, who is not going to take this stick anymore. He's not going to allow any credible threat to oppose the safety of his citizens. And actually, it's nice to see someone in the West who's actually got some sort of bravery, some sort of confidence and some sort of trust in his people and actually trying to put them first. I would love to see Starmer actually have a rousing speech and actually put the interest and our safety first, rather than allowing these mobs to go down our streets every single week.
Where's David Lammy? Do you reckon old Lord Hermer's locked him in a cupboard?
Well, it might be someone having £7,000 worth of biscuits in one meeting. Who knows, you know?
I don't know about the £7,000 worth of biscuits. Lord Hermer, though, I'm alarmed by him.
Okay.
And not just because of his legal past.
Why are we terrified and alarmed about everything, guys? I'm worried. I'm alarmed about how alarmed you are.
Because he's told Starmer not to get involved in helping America deal with the biggest terrorist state on earth. Because this man, who didn't have any political credentials before becoming Attorney General, seems to have a heck of a lot of sway over our Prime Minister. That, to me, is alarming.
And it's terrifying. We've got someone who is totally unaccountable, who we have no idea, and as Alex said, no political background at all, calling major shots and acting against the best interests of the British people. The idea now that we sold off Chagos, which is some disastrous deal, which actually should have been a right of the Chagosian people. And now, of course, we've got Gibraltar, where now the Spanish are now running the border control. Everything this man is doing is turning to rubble and dust. And actually, it's very scary that these human rights lawyers are just running around Whitehall, impacting our nation's security, prosperity and its future. And it's pretty disgraceful. And we've had enough of these career politicians, these human rights lawyers, dictating.
But a minute ago you were saying that Lord Hermer doesn't have enough political experience. No, now you're having a go at career politicians. And aren't you a counsellor?
I am a counsellor, yes, and I stood up because I've had enough. I had a COVID-19 vaccine injury and I had no one help me.
I've got some exciting news for you guys. TechOp has put on my little screen here who Kobe Nasrall was, because we all couldn't wait to learn that fact, could we? Yeah, drum roll. It doesn't surprise me, because it is, of course, in the independent Republic of Tower Hamlets, independent Bangladeshi Republic of Tower Hamlets, that Qazi, I thought that was a slang for a toilet. Anyway, Qazi Nazrul Islam, often referred to as Kobe Nasrallah, no wonder he uses that Kobe, is a renowned Bengali poet, writer, musician and revolutionary. He is the national poet of Bangladesh. There you go. Now we know. So, of course, Tower Hamlets is, well, like I said, the independent Republic of Bangladesh, right here in London. Guys, thank you ever so much. It's been delightful to have you on the programme. We got through a lot there, and we had some heated exchanges, but also I think it was... at most part, energetic, but in a gentlemanly spirit. So give each other a big hug or a handshake or whatever it is.
I like Sunday mornings.
There you go. Thank you ever so much, Maxwell Harrison and Andy Williams. Now, listen, I'm about to take a short break. Then it's the final hour of the show. Hasn't it gone by ever so quickly? Don't go anywhere. Put on the kettle, and I'll be back to keep you company for another hour just after this. I'll see you in a moment.
I can announce this government will begin the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War. Yeah. We will deliver our commitment to spend 2.5% of GDP on defence, but we will bring it forward so we reach that level in 2027.
The answer from European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
On Saturday, we also agreed a new £2.2 billion loan for Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sends his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to you?
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
I will do.
I've got to tell him what your reaction is, so I need to know. I need to know.
He is a great gentleman. A great, great gentleman. He said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time, and he better not be right. Well, I just think he should be more appreciative because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us because, as you know, that's right there. That's the border.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are not
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back to the show. 3 hours down, one more to go. I can't believe it. It has absolutely flown by. I think that's largely because I'm in a very pecker mood this morning. That's right, because Donald Trump decided after saying, well, I'll ruminate over 2 weeks. Let's see if Iran wants to negotiate. Decided, nah, ain't going to give you 2 weeks. Going to give you 2 New York seconds, my friends, because I'm coming in with my B2s. And I loved it. I woke up this morning. I was all over that news. I'd gone to sleep last night doing one of my favourite late-night activities. What is that, you're wondering? Yes, it's looking at Flight Tracker to see where military jets and refuelling aircraft are going in the world and when they disappear offline. I love it. It's absolutely brilliant. Lots of people out there messaging going, well done, Donald Trump, for essentially saving the world. I haven't found anyone yet who thinks this is a bad idea, apart from clearly Lord Hermer, who thinks that defending the West full stop is a bad idea, or so it seems. Let's speak now to the wonderful Bob Seeley, who was, of course, former Conservative MP on the Isle of Wight and a military expert and author of Total War, about new forms of warfare in the 21st century. We love him. Good morning to you, Bob. Great to have you on the show.
Good morning, Alex. Good morning to your listeners and viewers.
Alex's mum's favourite you are, although Will is giving you a run for your money today, can I just say.
Blimey.
Anyway, Bob,
Yeah.
did you wake up this morning and sort of fist pump the air 80s ballad style, a bit like I did?
No, not quite. But, I mean, I slightly despair of all these people who think it's the end of the universe. I mean, it might be that we'll never have a better chance to reshape positively the Middle East. I think Iran is becoming a paper tiger. And look, there are risks here. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. But for those people sort of immediately hand-wringing and say, oh, my God, you know, everyone must sit down and talk. I'm sorry, when you're facing really evil people sometimes, maybe sometimes, you know, striking them is the best form of defence. So let's see. I'm not as fist pumped as you, but I'm certainly not a Lord Hermer. Let's put it like that.
What are the risks now? Because we've already seen retaliatory strikes from Tehran levelled against Israel. We spoke to Jonathan Sakadoty live from a bomb bunker at 6 o'clock this morning. But it seems to me Israel are sort of, ready and capable of intercepting much of the kinetic that is pointed in their direction, although we do understand 30% has impacted. Are the risks in our country the likelihood of something like reprisals from IRGC cells?
Yeah, look, I mean, this is the problem. When people say, oh, my God, Iran's going to plunge everyone into a Middle Eastern war, they're sort of trying, and it hasn't worked. The Israelis are shooting down the majority of missiles that are coming across, thanks to their technology and US technology in this sort of, it's called Iron Dome is one bit of it, but people generally refer to Iron Dome as the whole thing as well. So the Iranians are trying to do their worst to have a massive effect, and they're not really succeeding, bar the aerial assault on Israel, which Israel is coping with pretty well. And if the best that they can do is to launch drones or small-scale attacks on US bases, and potentially others, the French and the British as well, clearly that's serious. But this is not epoch-making stuff. And I think the problem for Iran is it's turning out to be a paper tiger, and all this, it's propaganda saying they're going to destroy Israel. So far it's just seemed to be very, very hollow. And the Israeli operation to destroy Hamas, destroy Hezbollah, and now destroy Iran, from a military point of view, is pretty staggeringly successful thus far. Thus far, I hasten.
I agree, and it seems to me, that suggests to me that this has been years and years in the making, being able to penetrate that regime and make sure that they've got informants on the inside, being able to strike military leaders in the theocracy of Tehran, in their beds, being able to intercept, when we look at what happened against Hezbollah, the supply chains. It seems to me that this has been a long time in the making, and perhaps a long time in the making between Israel and the United States. Why do you think that we're not supporting that? Why is it that Sir Keir Starmer is saying this morning, in fact, instead let's return to the negotiating table? Is that the right approach for the UK Prime Minister to take?
No, not now. Sorry. I just think it's pathetic what he's saying. It's just sort of moral equivocating, hand-wringing, as if sort of Iran developing the bomb and threatening to destroy an ally, and pretty much everyone else who gets in its way, that's okay because that's part of normal diplomacy. But Israel actually thinking, maybe we don't want to be obliterated. That happened in the middle of the last century. We don't really like it. We're not going to have it again. That is escalatory. I don't get that. Iran is a really evil and vile regime, and we should be remembering they hang and they kill. They have killed hundreds of their own political opponents. The mullahs have killed hundreds of their own political opponents within Iran just in the last year. If you're a woman and you refuse to wear what the Iranian regime considers inappropriate, and you wear inappropriate dress, you're running the risk of being killed by this regime. It is vile and it is evil, and Israel has the right to self-defense. Look, I mean, like a lot of people, you look at what's going on and you do worry. If the Iranians have somehow got the bomb, or pay some mad Pakistani scientist or some Pakistani institution to nick one, and they end up with one and they drop it somewhere, it could get a whole load worse. Is that likely to happen? It's pretty unlikely. And right now, Iranian power is being deconstructed extraordinarily. And Alex, you said it yourself. I mean, just the intelligence operation you need to be able to break into somebody else's intelligence and find out what all their senior commanders are and kill them is an extraordinary achievement.
It's an extraordinary achievement indeed. And I think, Netanyahu's been saying for a long time, we're on the front line and we're fighting the war on global terror for all of you. And I'm minded to agree with him. But the reason that we're not apparently in the fray, according to some reports, is because a good old Attorney General Lord Hermer had said to Sir Keir Starmer, it will break international law. Who's going to rid our Prime Minister of this troublesome priest?
Well, I mean, which came first, chicken or egg? I mean, who's worse, Starmer or Hermer? Hermer is basically Starmer before Starmer pretended he was a patriot. Sorry, excuse my cynicism. I just think they're as bad as each other. It's just Starmer's got to cosplay being a patriot and cosplay being interested in this country's national interest. And, he says he is, and I'm sure he feels that he is. The problem is he's a human rights lawyer who basically puts very dubious interpretations of very dubious international courts above the national interest of indeed us, but also the wider West. I think Hermer's a disgrace to this country. I don't know where his loyalties lie, but they are not to the British national interest. And I think more fool Starmer for keeping Hermer in tow, because I think increasingly Hermer is going to do real damage to Starmer, and good reason too, because he's a dreadful, dreadful lawyer to be advising Starmer on what is what is legal as law, because you know perfectly well that he will go to the nth degree to interpret our national interest through the prism of highly dubious sub-Marxist interpretations of international law, where we are always in the wrong. He's horrible. We need to get rid of him. You're absolutely right. And of course he won't, because Starmer and Hermer are as one. Starmer is basically Hermer before Starmer went into politics.
I mean, I'm very alarmed that there's this man who seems to be Starmer's extreme leftist lawyer buddy from old, who's just brought in, parachuted in as Attorney General. Not only is he given one of the most significant roles in cabinet, but it seems to me that in this position, Starmer's the marionette and Hermer's the one actually dictating our foreign policy. I mean, it's totally unsustainable. I despair. I really do. Bob, thank you ever so much. The glorious Bob Seeley there, who is the former Conservative MP on the Isle of Wight, military expert and author of Total War, about new forms of warfare in the 21st century. I mean, I just think... Will's back, everyone. Look at him. There he is.
Yeah, everyone.
Will is back.
Yeah, I said at 6 a.m, I'll say it again. I love the smell of napalm in the morning. What a day.
What a day. But let's actually sort of riff on this topic a little bit more, and the lily-liveredness of Starmer, and potentially being in the pocket of his old mate Hermer, who, when you look at the roll call of who he's represented, and yes, everyone deserves representation and all the rest of it, but really, did you have to pick those clients? And some of the decisions that have already been taken, allegedly at the behest of Hermer, these are things that directly, to me, attack national security, attack national interest, and very often, when it comes to particularly the question of Islamism, this government are in all sorts of a mess, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. I'm not sure whether he's in the pocket of Hermer as much as they just believe the same things. They're both from that same clique of international human rights lawyers who put the concept of globalism ahead of the interests of the United Kingdom. And it's a really toxic ideology. Someone described it to me as the political extension of socialism. If socialism is the economic ideology, then this sort of globalist agenda, which says that, well, really every country is the same, that all cultures are equal, is the political extension of that. And you get the sense that someone like Keir Starmer and Lord Hermer believe, really, well, you know what, the Islamist ideology and the values of Britain, well, you know, they're not better or worse than each other, they're just different, so we need to make accommodations for them. We need to have people in this country who are not afraid to say that Western liberal democracy is the best way that you organise a society. Islamism is dangerous, and we need to have the guts to call that out in the face of people who will say you're racist for saying it when you're not.
I have a feeling that religion's going to be the undoing of this Labour Party, with the grooming gangs national inquiry, with future elections coming on, with lily-liveredness on the international stage, not being able to answer questions such as would you ban the burqa, the pro-Palestine march is not doing anything about that. I just have a feeling that, you know, Labour's bedfellow is a bit of their Frankenstein's monster right now.
Yeah, well, look at someone like Wes Streeting, right? You know, who is actually probably, again, there's not much competition, but he's one of the better talents in that Labor Party, and he's going to be booted at the next election when an Islamic candidate is put up against him.
By Jess Phillips as well.
Yeah, this is going to happen. One of the great threats to this country is the rise of Islamic sectarian politics. Labor has done more than anyone else to birth that through their embrace of multicultural ideology, and you're exactly right. It is a Frankenstein's monster because he is going to take them down in marginal seats.
Oh yeah, they've been the parasite on the Labour Party for so long, and now they don't need the Labour Party anymore.
Yeah, it's the world's worst Greek tragedy.
Yeah. Indeed, indeed. Right, we're going to be taking a short ad break now, but don't go anywhere. There's 45 minutes of fun and opinions and fieriness, and drum rolls on the desk coming up after this.
Well, it is, and I thought Diane Abbott actually made a very powerful intervention today. That's a phrase I've never used.
Oh, hang on, Robert. No, sorry, we've booked the wrong guest, guys.
You've got the wrong
Robert's
guest.
gone mad. He's citing wisdom from Diane Abbott.
Not for the first time, gone a bit mad in my case, but she is against this, and what she said was that she wouldn't want to put, and I quote, her life in the hands of a panel, and we can add to that a government-sponsored panel.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, welcome back to the show. And in unprecedented developments here in Talk Towers, I'm proud to announce I've got my second Maxwell of the day in the studio. It's Maxwell Marlowe, Director of Public Affairs at the Adam Smith Institute. What is it with all the Maxwells?
I don't know, I think it's a great name. And well, my parents said when I was born, they selected it very carefully. It's one of the most popular names in 1999, and that's what they went for. No fancy story, but apparently it was, yeah.
Ah. Well, you know, a Maxwell sitting in the provinces of a Murdoch. You know, who'd have thunk it? Who'd have thunk it? Right, well, let's talk politics, shall we? And first of all, this poll by Ipsos showing that Reform are on course, not just to win the next general election, but to basically become the only party in that parliament by the looks of some of the projections here, the seat projections, putting Reform on around 400 seats with a 200-seat majority, Labour down on about 140, and the Conservatives down on fewer than 10. If nothing shifts between now and 2029, of course it all will. Does this surprise you, and do you think it's sustainable?
I'm not surprised at all, really. I'm sure we'll come on to it, but, you know, we just released some polling today in the Telegraph. We just showed that voters are just so apathetic to the current political system. 20% don't know who to vote for, 1 in 5 have moved over from Labour to Reform. It is really, really significant. And I think across the political landscape, where, of course, in the last election, there were very, very tight margins across the country, I wouldn't be surprised at all to see Reform absolutely sweeping into power if an election was tomorrow. But, you know, 3 years is a long time in politics.
It's a long time in politics, but one wonders whether the doorstep issues are going to be addressed over the course of those 3 years. So when you're talking about people now sort of being either apathetic, 20% not knowing who to vote for, 1 in 5 Labour voters going, actually, I fancy a bit of that Farage. Back in the day, UKIP used to harvest, I think, 1/3 of their votes from Labour voters. So it'll be interesting to see how that also pans out. But one imagines the motivating factors when it comes to the support of Reform is immigration. Probably the main factor, I would say, because it's something that Nigel Farage is synonymous with. And one would assume that that is not going to be an issue that is comprehensively addressed come 2029. And with things like the National Inquiry into grooming gangs, does it have the potential of turning into an even bigger bloodbath for the legacy parties?
Essentially, yeah. I mean, look, the problem that Keir Starmer has is that he inherited the Boris wave, you know, that huge surge of immigration, you know, from about 2020 to about 2021. And then following through to the election, the numbers just never came down, really. But Starmer made a huge point about trying to address it, and he's absolutely failed. Remember, smash the gangs? I mean, we're at record high numbers coming in.
But one person got arrested, Maxwell.
Oh, I know, and isn't that absolutely brilliant? But, you know, it's going to take a lot more than that to butter the parsnips of voters. And, you know, I really do think that unless I've suggested personally, new immigrants should come in, they should have, private healthcare as a stipulant for their visa, so they're not overburdening the NHS. Because when we asked voters about this, they were absolutely clear. Government's priorities are absolutely wrong, and there's way too much burden on the health service. They don't buy we have immigration to support the health service, simply have immigration to bring it down.
Well, why should non-citizens have access to any benefits? I'm an immigrant. I don't think I should have a right to have benefits from this country.
Yeah, you can go get gangrene in the corner of the room, sunshine.
Yeah, well, that's right. But you know, the benefit in this country is being able to be in the country. The benefit isn't being able to sit on the couch and collect money from the government.
Yeah, totally, of course.
I mean, do you think that the Labour Party are going to actually read the runes here, look at what's going on in terms of the polling, look at what's going on with the big doorstep issues, actually take a leaf out of the book of other countries? I mean, it strikes me that when these people are getting in dinghies from France, they ain't coming out of four-star hotels in Calais. They're living under canvas in makeshift camps. And that we have been really look at some of the interviews done on the coastline of France, and all these migrants are going, well, we want our hotel room, we want our private housing. They arrive at Manston where they get processed. Brilliant whistleblowing reports in the Mail yesterday from staff at Manston saying that's the first thing they ask. Where's our free phone? Where's our hotel room? It's effing ridiculous, isn't it? But is it in Labour's DNA to put a stop to all of this?
They don't have a choice. They're going to have to do it, or else I'm concerned there'll be civil unrest. I mean, really, I think we are at that point as a country. We are so fed up. The economy's not working, the social services aren't working, immigration is way too high, and the trust in government couldn't be lower. So I think we are on the verge of something really bad. So Labour are going to have to do something about this, at least for national security.
Right. Yeah, go.
But Maxwell, the thing is that they don't have the political appetite to do the necessary things in order to make that change. But we know that you need to get out of the ECHR if you want to stop the boat. It is a necessary precondition, and the one thing that we've said this, the one thing that the Lord Hermers and the Starmers of this world believe in, if they don't believe in anything else, it is international human rights law. So yes, they need to solve the problem, but they're not willing to do the things that you need to do to solve the problem.
Yeah, is the problem here, actually, or problem, is the problem here, actually, they're now even contemplating doing a deal with France. For every return to France, we'll take one of theirs from France. I mean, it's ridiculous. That doesn't actually move the number at all. But also this, so you were talking about the risk of civil unrest. And I go back to a story that I covered yesterday, in fact. And it was one of various cases reported by The Sun, but in this particular case, a rape charge against a man staying in an asylum hotel was deliberately hushed up because guess what? It might inflame community tensions. In the same article, we then find out about more migrants living in asylum seeker hotels raping vulnerable girls. A 17-year-old raped by Mohammed Akbari, who jumped on her from bushes. Gave her alcohol or something along that lines. Two similar cases, no public statements issued about suspects links to asylum housing. A 27-year-old man staying at a hotel in Kensington, my neck of the woods, multiple charges over serious sex attacks, rape, attempted rape. Now, when you're moving these men from hotels, which is bad enough, costs the taxpayer an arm and a blimmin' leg, but at least they're all in one site and you know where they're supposed to be. And actually, should you have the will or the want, you can have security on that door and make sure people don't go out or, don't come in. Although I hear there's plenty of them going out of their little Deliveroo uniforms and plenty of their so-called friends coming in as well. That the big issue here is the way the government, the instinct of the government of how to react to all of this isn't to deal with the problem, it's to oppress the British people by gaslighting them instead.
But, Alex, you heard Rachel Reeves a couple of weeks ago. She's going to end the use of migrant hotels, and where we're putting our asylum seekers. So I don't know why we're worrying.
By 2029.
Exactly.
Well,
no, there's no plan at all. And you're right, Alex. I mean, it's absolutely disgraceful what we're seeing across, especially London, but also we've seen up and down the country. Nice rural towns who have done nothing wrong, really, having hundreds of these, young men being imported into hotels next to schools and...
Is it not more alarming when they're going to be put in multi-occupancy houses? What could go wrong putting a load of 20-something lads from a country where women can't even show an ankle in a shared accommodation right in the middle of probably one of the poorest communities, therefore with the most vulnerable girls, without much to do apart from look at their phone and enjoy Bonnie Blue videos and then go lurk around outside school gates? Yeah. It seems to me that this is an incendiary concept that's going to be even worse than the hotels. Now, talking about, we were talking about this rape charge being covered up, an asylum seeker, and this was in Portsmouth. Well, let's speak now to Councillor George Madgwick, who was, in many respects, the whistleblower in all of this. George, tell us what went on, what you learnt about as a councillor, and why you decided time was up and that the public deserved to know what had happened.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on the show. First and foremost, let's always remember that there's a victim, a young woman at the heart of this, which obviously we've got to give our biggest sympathies to. But yeah, it's been a really difficult couple of days, to be fair, and a lot of soul searching. As councillors and as elected officials, you're privy to certain information, and this came across my desk last week, and I was absolutely infuriated beyond belief that anybody would try to not disclose this to the public or try to proactively keep it from the public eye. So over a couple of days, I decided to seek some legal advice. That legal advice was basically that if anything was in the public domain, then I could talk about it. So I went to the courts, like anybody could, like you or anyone could that was watching the show, asked for a copy of the court transcripts, of the court documents, and they provided me the name of the person, his address, what the charge was for, his future court date, what the outcome was. And I was able to then reveal that information because I think it's so important the public know what's happening.
Well, what did the council communique say regarding this in terms of the cover-up? Was it explicit in saying we are not talking about this because we're worried about inflaming tensions?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. That's exactly basically what was being said. It was to avoid community tensions, and they referenced obviously previous incidents up in the north of the country. But I think that's really treating the local people with contempt. The anger here with the local people isn't necessarily about the incident. I mean, people obviously are not happy about that, needless to say. But the real outrage here is the fact that once again, public officials or politicians have taken a proactive approach not to speak up against something that is so sensitive. And that's the real anger here. This is the story. It's the fact that there is, on the same week that the KC report comes out, that literally says that local authorities have had a hand in covering up these type of things. I've got an officer of the council contacting me on my personal device at midnight saying, remember, you're bound by a code of conduct and ad-lib in here, but basically keep your mouth closed.
Right.
You know, and it's terrible.
And do we know what is going to become of this particular so-called asylum seeker charged with rape and voyeurism? I mean, is there questions now of him being deported, or is he still staying at the taxpayers' pleasure at a lovely hotel on the seaside?
He's being held in remand, and he's due before the Crown Court again on the 14th of July, 10:30 in the morning. So he will be before court again, where he will submit a plea. But we've got to let the court process take its process. We need to make sure the legal process takes its way. But at the end of the day, fundamentally, this could have entirely been avoided by stricter conditions. I don't understand why people that are undocumented and unchecked can come into this country and be free to walk the streets and attack women at 4 a.m. in the morning. It's completely ridiculous. And these type of things can be avoided entirely.
Yeah, I agree. Councillor George Madrick, I applaud you for your bravery. I applaud you for being a heretic. I applaud you for blowing the whistle. I applaud you for taking your time to go and get legal advice to make sure the public could be informed about this. That is Councillor George Madrick, Portsmouth's Independence Party leader. Now, do you think, actually, guys, that this could be the first of many, that people have seen what Councillor George has done and said, we've had enough? Other people from local councils might say, the public deserve to know. And what we could find out is there's a constellation of similar cases up and down the country, because like I said, like George said, we let these people come into the country from medieval misogynistic nations where frankly a woman, especially a non-Muslim woman, is treated lower than a dog. Yep. They're put into hotels where they're all together, not doing anything. I've heard plenty of other reports that they're sitting there smoking weed or, you know, having women over or lurking around and trying to chat up local girls and all the rest of it. I mean, you know, they're men of a certain age and probably think it's a blimmin' sweet shop when they come to the UK. That this is likely to be repeated up and down the country. We'll have more and more people blowing the whistle, and then there you have it, Maxwell. You suddenly have the blue touch paper being lit and we're in a whole world of trouble.
Totally. I mean, you need councillors who, you know, really understand their job and their duty to the public to be whistleblowing on this sort of stuff. I mean, it's really quite simple. But it brings it back to this kind of touch paper problem, which is, unless the government really get this under control, I think the British people will have enough. And it's not like, we're not like the French, right? We don't go protesting, you know...
It's not a national sport going on a good old
Exactly. Yet. But I think you're right. You know.
Yeah, a couple of things. I spoke to David Betts, a professor of modern warfare at King's College, and he's now got some media attention recently for making, I think, an observation which would have been preposterous 5 or 10 years ago, but now it feels more real, and that is that there is a very real chance of civil war in this country before the decade is out. So it's not something we can take lightly. I am more sceptical about whether or not we will see more councillors with the bravery of George, because with every for every councillor like George, there are 5 that still have this sneering contempt for the people that effectively says, we do not trust you with information. You are too bigoted. You are too dumb. You are too emotional to be able to be trusted with the truth. That is such a prevalent attitude that permeates the political and media establishment in this country.
But the public know. They know why the grooming gangs were covered up. They know why the information on Southport wasn't given. They know why this particular case wasn't made known to the public. And it's because they know that the authorities out there have realised they've stuffed up this country, committed essentially mass cultural vandalism. You can't put the genie back in the bottle, and the only lever now the Labour Party seem to have to pull is to lie and to gaslight. But we also know that when the public do get a sense of what's going on, even if it's fake news as it was in the wake of Southport, that they have been prepared to take to the streets. Do you think the deterrence, the sort of heavy-handedness of Sir Keir Starmer, the televised judge judification of all of these trials of, you know, various writers, oh, we've got to release all these people from prison, but don't worry, we can get you through the system really quickly, and essentially turning people like Lucy Connolly into a political prisoner, is that bung going to last? Because there's an interesting petition going on right now, I think started by Rupert Lowe, the former Reform UK MP, saying that Lucy Connolly should be released, and there are Labour MPs signing that. And you wonder, therefore, how long this sort of temporary stopcock of let's stop things from exploding by shoving a cork in it are going to last.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's... I think it's kind of... Dominic Cummings has just released an interview, actually, it's very interesting, where he says the British state is broken because the British state, for so long, was all about putting out misleading statistics, silencing its critics, you know, manipulating the media through terrible press conferences and press releases. And then slowly this truth always starts to leak out. So it always leaks out, you know, in a sort of a wave. And I think that's where we are now. I don't think it's going to last much longer. I think there's going to be, I wouldn't say a revolution per se, but there'll be a really serious change in the way the state works in the lead up to the next election, because that's what's on the card at the end of the day. Does the state work, and can we fix it? Can we make it better?
Well, that is the key question, and this is the question that will come up with reform more and more over the next 4 years, which is, if people are on board with their ideological movement, that's fantastic, but do they have the political and executional ability to be able to take on Whitehall, to be able to actually get things done in a system which is inherently resistant to change? And to be honest, that is still an unanswered question.
Many unanswered questions, but if you've been wondering how you might be able to get your hands on Oasis tickets, that's a question I can answer. I know, I'm the queen of segues. I know, I'm the queen of segues today, right? Because it's competition time here at Talk. We have got 2 tickets to give away to go and see Oasis, not just anywhere, not at Wembley, where all the woke lot from Shoreditch are there pretending they were, you know, supporters of Oasis first time round. You weren't, you were too young. But no, in the heart of it all, Manchester on July the 19th. We'll also put you up in a hotel and give you 5k to splash. Whoa. Here's how.
Alright, kid, you have to be over 18 to enter in the UK excluding Northern Ireland. For a chance to win a pair of tickets to the most electrifying rock and roll reunion of the century, a hotel stay and £5 spending money, all you gotta do is text the word Oasis to 83338 by Monday the 7th of July at 11 p.m. and you'll be entered into the draw to go supersonic this summer. Sorted. Right, here's all the legal stuff. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You've got to have the bill payer's permission or post your name and number to Oasis Prize Draw, PO Box 3190, Colchester, CO2 8GP, to arrive by 5 p.m. on the 10th of July. This is a TalkSport limited promotion run on TalkSport, Talk and Virgin Radio UK stations. Full T's and C's at talksport.com.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello Hello, welcome back to the show. This is Alex Phillips with you for just 25 more minutes, believe it or not. Time flies when you're having fun, and hasn't it gone past quickly today? If you've been with me for the whole 3.5 hours, congratulations, you have discerning taste, you patriot, you brilliant person, making wonderful life choices on this Sunday morning. And if you want to make another wonderful life choice, you could get in touch with us, because the last quarter of an hour of the show, I want to hear from you. It's your last chance, roll up, to throw in your two-bit at the fun fair of factuality. What is factuality? I don't know. It's current affairs based on facts, something the BBC should probably learn how to do. 03444991000 is the number to dial. It's no more than your normal network rates. It's basically free to throw your thoughts around on air here at Talk Towers. You can also use that number to send me a WhatsApp, or indeed leave me a voice note on WhatsApp. I think we have a few of those queued up ready to play out a bit later, which is exciting. I do like them. 87222 is the number if you'd like to send me a text message. If you're going to do that, you've got to write talk before your blurb, and I'll try and get through as many messages and speak to some of you in the last 15 minutes of the show, but you can phone up and register your interest in participation now. Right, let's talk about all things net zero. We love it, don't we? Apparently heat waves will trigger a net zero meltdown, because, you know, there it is. All these technologies like electric cars and heat pumps could explode if it gets a little bit too hot. Well, ain't that just poetic justice? I mean, I was listening to a brilliant interview that Matt Ridley did, Lord Ridley, the other day about the science behind climate change as part of a longer ranged interview. And it's stunning when he talks about looking at the way that the climate has changed over the course of centuries, that actually in the 70s, I wasn't born then, everyone was panicking about a great global cooling, that it was all going to get freezing cold. Then, of course, we were told, oh, it's global warming. Now, of course, it's just climate change, because they can't decide which one they're going to pick, because basically no one's really decided, have they? And yet we are going hell for leather, buying all sorts of wim-wams and plastic sheets from slave manufacturers in China to scatter all over our perfectly fecund arable land, so we're no longer food sufficient, and cost the taxpayer an arm and a leg in the process. And hurrah, they're all going to explode.
I don't even know how to reply to that. To be honest, it's completely correct.
Here, probably at the start.
But, you know, I think all these doom-mongers who just go out and they say, well, you know, we've got to stop drilling, we've got to, you know, cool ourselves down and then heat ourselves up way too much. I think the beauty of what we can do is embrace the free market and capitalism to come up with the solutions to live with the problems. Because, you know, as Lord Ridley has said previously, the Earth has heated up and it's cooled down, and you know, it's up to how we want to deal with that, you know, as a free market. What I'm concerned about are the kind of leftists, the socialists, the controllers who come in and they will tell us wrongly how to deal with these problems by overtaxing, by limiting production on the solution to the innovations. I think that's the big problem that I'm really worried about. I don't know about you.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what the climate change movement is. It's not really about the climate. It's about anti-humanism. It's about degrowth. It's about limiting us because of this self-flagellating instinct that for the last 200 years we have somehow, as a result of the Industrial Revolution, cursed the planet and cursed minority groups and all that sort of thing. Which is why, by the way, if you actually did care about carbon emissions, you'd go all in on nuclear, for example. But there are so many lefties who otherwise care about climate change that somehow have a problem with nuclear. So I think you need to cut through the nonsense when they talk about this stuff and realise this is just another part of a broader Marxist push that can manifest itself in any number of these omni-cores.
The omni-cores,
areas.
yeah, that's it.
Oh my God! So talking about the sort of Marxism, the socialist realism, if you're familiar with the form of art that came out of communist Russia, was, you know, all these sort of Stakhanovite movements, and everyone's got to sort of play their part. Well, look at this. This is crackers. Apparently, hairdressers are being encouraged to put these little green stickers on their mirrors in a pilot scheme called Mirror Talkers, carrying, sort of giving green tips, encouraging them to have conversations with their clients about how they can make planet-friendly changes to their hair care habits. I mean, that is, can I just say, this is so 90s, because I remember in the 90s, like, well, don't use any aerosols, ozone layer, hole in ozone layer, so there went L-nets for a sweet second.
Yeah,
but
well,
as
China opens 3 new coal-fired power stations a week, and yet Barbara can somehow change the climate when she's getting a perm, or... You still get perms? Is perm still a thing? Whatever.
Don't tempt fate. We do not want that coming. was no good. No good came from the perm. No good whatsoever. Oh my God, do you want to? Oh, this is so beautiful. This is like perfect leftist jargon. So the authors of this particular project, convened by Oxford's Dr. Sam Hampton, envisage salon chats beginning with haircare as a point of connection, but expanding to broader conversations about energy, transport, food, investments, carbon literacy, and intergenerational responsibility. Has this person ever been to a freaking salon? No one talks about that with a hairdresser. And calling for funding for their initiative, they concluded yielding the power of everyday influencers to build public consensus is an underutilised strategy which demands new approaches to climate policy. What even that means, I don't know. But I don't know that. Well, I mean, I would love to see my hairdresser do this. I've got this little Greek hairdresser who's amazing, and with his Australian wife. And we always joke. I mean, he calls me the Nazi Barbie because he jokes for me when he's doing my hair, and he loves it. He thinks I'm too left wing. I can't imagine him getting these little green stickers on his mirror, going, "Oh, do you know what, Alex? Instead of using the hairdryer, perhaps you should just go sit under 34-degree London sunshine to give you a blow dry." I mean, absolute madness.
Yeah.
Right, we're going to be catching up with Jim Dale just now. Before I do that, I've got to say goodbye and thank you so much to Maxwell, because after the next break, he will have disappeared from the landscape here in the studios. But Jim Dale, senior meteorologist, author, and social correspondent, welcome to the show.
Yeah, Alex.
First of all, what do you make of the fact that green technologies might struggle a bit in, well, high temperatures?
Yeah, can you name me an energy that hasn't struggled in high temperatures or extremely low temperatures? I think it comes with the area that it's in. Energy is prone to difficulties when you get excess. So whether it be renewables, net zero direction, or whether it be oil, gas, or whatever has been in the past, you know, the weather and the atmosphere dictates, and when it does become excessive, yeah, there are difficulties out there that scientists have to overcome that make us step forward. But you've got to always think, Alex, that renewables are a relatively new kid off the block, and there will always be problems in terms of going forward with these sort of things. I'm not sure anybody wants to turn the clock back on renewables. They're clean. They're going to be cheaper into the future. So yeah, it comes with problems, but I think those are expected, and we just have to take them in our stride.
It's a problem though, Jim, that I'm looking. I mean, I'm going to zoom in now on solar panels, because we saw what happened in Spain when their solar panels went a little bit wonky. America's deeply worried that their solar panels have got kill switches in that the regime in Beijing has put in place, so they can potentially just turn them off and create the sort of surge, or the opposite of a surge, that you get on a grid that makes the whole thing collapse. Is there a risk actually that we're throwing good money after bad towards China to provide all of this technology, and it might last as long as the CD, that in about 10 years time people go, well, that's great, we completely decimated our farmland for the sort of technology which just isn't particularly apt for the UK climate?
Yeah, well, I go back to where I started in terms of saying these things evolve. They do take time to be, let's just say, totally efficient in terms of the way that they move. So I think science will overcome these problems into the future. So it's not a case of, oh, it doesn't quite work, so we'll throw it into the bin. I think in time these things will work, and they'll work in the excessive temperatures we're talking about. I'm not sure Spain was anything to do with, and it's not been proven, the power outage there was anything to do with solar. It could be many reasons, but look, right throughout history, whether we're talking oil or gas or even fire to begin with, there was always going to be problems, and I think it's a very natural thing for us to evolve these things and to make ourselves better in terms of, this is science I'm talking now, in terms of overcoming the problems that we get. So yeah, teething problems, absolutely, there'll always be, but I think the evolution of science, the evolution of renewables, it's the direction of travel, and there'll be no turning these things back. These are things that are going forward, not backwards.
Oh, I don't know. I have a feeling solar panels could end up in the same place as DVDs and CDs, which is random bits of metallic-y plastic nonsense.
I'll make a little bet with you, Alex, if you wish. They'll still be here in 5 years' time. We can make a nice charity bet if you wish.
Yeah, go on then. In 5 years' time, let's sort of shape
back
on
in
it
5
from
years'
a
time.
distance.
There you go.
Now, when you get your barnet tended to, because you have a very delightful coiffure, I can tell that you're an enthusiast when it comes to.
Really?
Yes, exactly. You look extremely dapper, sartorial elegance.
Thank you.
When you go to your barbers, do you talk about climate? Well, probably you do actually. There's going to be anyone on planet Earth who does talk about climate change with a barber. It is Jim Dale. But what do you think of this scheme, sort of pushing for funding, trying to encourage salons up and down the country to initiate conversations on how people can change the planet, beginning by making planet-friendly change to their hair care habits?
Well, isn't that such a positive? You know, and to be honest with you, when you're sitting there in an hairdresser's, a barber's, that barber has got something that you haven't got, and that's a pair of scissors. So you don't want to put their, you know, you don't want to be arguing with them. That's the last thing you tend to have nice, friendly conversations with your hairdressers for good reasons. You're in prison. You're sat there in a chair. He or she has got a pair of scissors. You don't want to annoy them. And I think that's the general trend anyway, that you do have nice conversations. And there's nothing wrong with sustainability. Even the likes of Richard Tice, MP for Skegness and Dubai, even he would be in favour of, sustainables, renewables. He's got a business in renewables. He drives an electric car. So I'm sure he has great conversations while getting in his barnet or cut to pieces. So, yeah, I think these are positives. It's much better than social media, where it tends to be, even myself to a certain degree, hit them and run. This is more kind, more friendly, and I think the messages can be getting across. And then is listening and saying, "Oh, I'm not interested in sustainable." Well, sustainable goes far farther than renewables. We're talking about things that the planet Earth, that we don't want to trash planet Earth, that we can keep it a clean place, and that what we use can be reused. Is there anybody out there who would argue with that? I doubt it, to be honest with you.
Jim, I'll tell you, my man, I have a feeling if this very clever Dr. Sam Hampton from Oxford University went and sort of did a survey of most salons down the country, I think they might struggle to find woke hairdressers, if I'm honest, to be part of this, unless you go to Notting Hill. The rest of them would snatch a hand off to defend their right to use foils, I'll tell you that much. Jim, they're always a pleasure to have you on the programme. Seriously, woke hairdressers? There's no such thing, mate. Apart from, like I said, the sort of 500 quid a cut salons of Notting Hill, but otherwise the rest of them are all like, all right, love, I hate this climate change muck. Anyway, okay, we're going to take a short break. After that is your opportunity to get in touch, and I'd love to hear from loads of you. 03444991000 is the number. Roll up. It's your last opportunity to join me live in the studio. That's after this.
Well, it is, and I thought Diane Abbott actually made a very powerful intervention today. That's a phrase I've never used.
Oh, hang on, Robert. No, so we've booked the wrong guest, guys.
You've got the wrong
Robert's
guest.
gone mad. He's citing wisdom from Diane Abbott.
Not for the first time, gone a bit mad in my case, but she is against this, and what she said was that she wouldn't want to put, and I quote, her life in the hands of a panel, and we can add to that a government-sponsored panel.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there! I love that. Will was just making a little sidebar commentary during the ad break, and it's like, you know, the faders go up, and it's like, what if that was caught? He just said leftism is mental illness. I'm like, well, yeah.
Yeah,
pretty much.
I think that's just sensible.
I'll happily say that on air as well as off air.
Sure.
Let's hit up the phone line, shall we? And first up is Chris, who's in Epsom. Good morning to you, Chris.
Morning, Alex.
Right, what is on your mind, my darling?
Great show. One thing I want to pick Peter up on a couple of things that he said earlier.
Oh, Peter Barnes, who's two hours ago. Well done for dedicated listening there. Gold star in the post to you, Chris.
Thank you. I do listen into your show all the time. When you're doing the weekend shows for in place of David, I think it's a great move. You have the type of energy that wakes people up in the morning.
Oh, well, hopefully that's welcome in certain households, including yours. Now, so you want to talk about something that Peter Barnes said earlier. Fill me in.
Yeah, but just before that, I was trying to point out to people yesterday that Trump said, I will make my decision in the next 14 days. He never said he was going to give Iran 14 days.
Yeah, no.
He's never broken. But lazy journalism by mainstream media and other papers, all talking about that he's given them 14 days. He never did.
I know.
I'll make my decision in the next.
I always know when it's lazy journalism, when all the journalists hear one person, one analyst or one commentator saying something, and then they all use exactly the same form of words. And the form of words that they kept using when Trump turned around via his spokeswoman, Caroline Leavitt, and basically said, look, we're going to give this within 2 weeks, you're absolutely right, is they all repeated the same phrase, well, that's turned down the temperature by a couple of degrees, that's turned tensions down by a couple of degrees. That's what I kept hearing, and I sat there listening going, he's going to go in right now, he's going in all in. There's the only reason he left that G7 to go to that situation room then and there was to decide how and when. It wasn't to sort of and ah whether or not the Europeans will get anything done in Geneva. He don't trust the Europeans. He knows they've basically sold out to Islamism anyway, a lot of them. Yep. And he saw what happened last time with the JCPOA, so France could carry on selling widgets for drones and stuff like that. And Germany, they had a good market over in Iran. But no, I really thought this ain't turning the temperature down. This is actually basically taking a step back to jump in and take them by surprise. So well called you on that one as well, Chris. Mm.
Yeah, it's funny because I actually messaged Peter yesterday and told him that's what I thought, and I thought that Trump would go in this weekend. Yesterday. Yeah. Anyway, what Peter was saying about reform, he's sort of right and sort of wrong. Reform has grown exponentially faster than any political party ever. It's been carried by Nigel, who is a conviction politician. I've watched him and supported him for 20 years. He says what he's going to do, and he does it. Mm. I don't think that it's fair to say, well, they haven't got any policies in place now. It's just rhetoric.
Well, no one has right now. This whole like, where's all your policies? It's like the election's not for 4 years. Yeah, no, also, by the way, to the same media who keep asking that, why didn't you ask that about Sir Keir Starmer during the snap election? No one asked him to say a squeak on what Labour's policies were. They just said, all the journalists did before the snap election was keep telling us how Labour was going to win with a landslide, which, as far as I'm concerned, is electoral interference. It's actually swaying the vote. Not once did they say, what are you going to pay? You're going to pay for it. Ridiculous lot.
I talk to my friends and neighbours. I've got a very mixed bag of neighbours. I live in my parents' house now. My father passed 2 years ago, and I care for my mum because she's very poorly. But
I'm sorry to hear that.
This was all, if you like, it was an all-white English road when we moved, when they bought the house in 1971. I've now got next door Portuguese, across the road Bangladesh, Indian, an Iraqi asylum seeker that came, and he's been here about 10, 11 years now. Came in with nothing. Started a dry cleaning business. He's great. 2 doors away, Southampton. But when talking to them, right, all of them, all right, support reform, because my ward is 6,500 houses for the local.
Yeah.
Because our house is one of the elections that was cancelled by
the gerrymandering Labour Party.
Yeah, exactly. But I was a Tory boy all my life.
Yeah.
Third generation Tory. I'm a Thatcher boy as well.
Yeah.
She gave me the vision to pull my bootstraps up and get on with life, and I did, and I've been pretty successful.
Well done.
That's who Nigel reminds me of. He has that grandeur and that conviction, and when he says something, when he's talking to you, you believe what he's saying.
He doesn't circumlocute. He doesn't miss his words. He's quite clear and direct. I think he's probably one of the best politicians in fielding questions from journalists, because he's the only one who ever answers questions from journalists.
And this is the effect that he's had, right? I mean, it hasn't just been over the last year. As I say, I've watched him for 20 years and always thought he was great.
Well, there you go.
Even though I'm a Tory,
yeah,
right, I never joined the Tory party.
Yeah.
But I have joined Reform.
Well, there you are.
I have got my conference ticket.
There you go. You see, you've pinned your colours to the mast. Chris, I'm going to love you and leave you because I want to squeeze in one more call before we go to advert break, and that is Ian, who's in London. Hello there, Ian.
Good morning, Alex.
Good morning.
President Trump bombing Iran.
Yeah.
Now, who are they going to bomb next?
Well, I don't think they necessarily plan on bombing anyone next. I think they were taking out Iran's nuclear facilities. I don't think they've particularly got a next one on the list.
Oh, I know. Let's bomb Israel, because they've got a nuclear weapons program. Let's bomb Israel, shall we?
Well, why would we be bombing Israel? Israel aren't threatening to blow up the world. They aren't trying to eradicate another country. They don't hate the West. They're our allies.
Well, perhaps if we hadn't toppled Mohammed Mossadegh in 1953, the democratic elected leader of Iran, they might not dislike us so much. How about that, Alex?
Oh, you're one of these people who go, because the West did something before, that's why Muslims hate us. You're wrong. The Islamists of this world hate us because we're not Muslim, not because we did something in their country 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. The Mad Ayatollah of Iran hates Israel because it's a Jewish nation, not because of anything Israel's done.
Oh, yes, actually, no. The Shah of Iran sold Israel their oil. And that's why Mossadegh was actually toppled. That's why. And Islamists, actually, Iran are Persian. They're not really Islamists.
Hold on.
Come from
They might be
Saudi
Persian, but that
Arabia.
doesn't make them non-Muslim. You're just saying they're not Arabs.
Look, the Islamists come from places like Pakistan, which we
Hold on.
created.
So you're saying that Islamists come from Pakistan and not Iran. So what would you call the Ayatollah? What's he, a Zoroastrian?
Ayatollah Khomeini was created in a response for us toppling Mohammed Mossadegh to steal their oil.
Okay.
That's how we created.
Ian, are you sitting there in one of those black and white kafirs right now, by any chance?
Am I sitting what, darling?
In wearing one of those black and white kafirs?
Kafirs.
Okay.
No,
clearly not one of your fashion choices. Listen,
I'm actually non-religious.
Okay, Ian. I'm gonna love you and leave you because I've got to. It's coming right up to the end of the programme. Also, because I don't agree with a word you're saying. But there you go. Thank you for calling the show. Welcome aboard. Oh, look at us, pretty in pink.
Hello there. Got the memo.
Hi.
How you doing?
What do you make of what went on?
Well, on the brink of World War III, it's crazy. We're going straight to the Middle East with Yoram Confino, who's going to tell us what is happening from his perspective. We've got the former Middle East minister, we've got the former ambassador to the United States, Kim Darroch. Lord Darroch is on. We've got the Shadow Foreign Secretary, Priti Patel. We've got a bumper show ahead. We're going to go into this in great detail. Claire Muldoon is there as well, my friend Lee Scott, who's in Israel. He's been trapped there for the last few days. He has been very, very close to a rocket attack. That's happening too. Also in domestic politics, Reform on course to win the next election. We'll be talking to someone from them as well, and of course getting the American perspective in all of this. And Keir Starmer following Kemi Badenoch saying that Kneecap shouldn't perform at Glastonbury.
Who would have thought? So Keir Starmer following someone else's actions and not doing them first.
In fairness, he's saying the right thing on that. Obviously, there's an